My God, what have you done?
Oh, I'm sorry, but this was done to me just as much as it was done to you.
Montgomery Scott at your service.
James, our Chief Science Officer, Mr. Spock.
Orders, Captain.
You heard it up top. We are trekking through the stars once more, as we are known to do on this podcast, as we once again talk a little Star Trek. This time, Season 2, Strange New Worlds, here on Normies Like Us with your hosts, Colin, number one.
This will be Captain Christopher Mike of the Starship Enterprise.
And I guess
It's
this
good.
is Science Officer Jock once
Hey.
again.
Wow.
Jock, wow, you've been time traveling.
Wow.
You've been busy.
Yeah,
Shouldn't tell
live
you
long
about
and
that.
prosper.
Yeah, live long and prosper.
Normie
Normie.
friends.
Set your phasers to fun. You know, we're talking Star Trek, Strange New World.
It might.
Once again.
What a great thing to say, because this episode in particular, I've been looking so forward to talking to. It's a show that is so fun. It makes me so happy. We had a great little experience watching the finale, which I feel like we'll talk about as well.
Yeah.
But I don't know, just real quick up top, everybody's history with Strange New Worlds. Something I wanted to point out to you guys, I was thinking about as we sort of watched this second season. I have never seen the Discovery soft pitch for this whole show.
Right.
So
Normies, if you remember the history of this show, Strange New Worlds, is that these characters, at least the main trio originally, Pike, Spock, and Una, number one, were introduced on Star Trek Discovery Season 2 as guest characters for that season. And based on their popularity in that show, they got their own spin-off. So really, this entire show is thanks to a show that I don't think is very good, Star Trek Discovery. But hey, they took a good idea and they kept going with it. So
yeah. Somehow, you know, great casting, first of all, but I think, you know, Discovery was doing a little bit, you know, it's the modern Trek stuff. It's a lot noisier, a lot more action. And then when they went back in time in season 2 and they introduced this charismatic Pike and number one and Spock, and it's like, I want to hang out with these guys more. And I think it's what classic Trek fans are kind of more into.
Yeah.
And they're like, we should just do a whole show. We'll just do like a classic Trek throwback show. And that's what Strange New Worlds is. It's like a best of, I guess, for old fans and new
Discovery, I would say never. The problem with Discovery is it never knew really what it wanted to be, because it was a show that was set in this time period in the TOS era.
Weird to think about.
And then they go forward,
but it's this super secret, top secret ship that no one knows about, and it has all these modern technologies and stuff that aren't any of the other ships. And then after season 2 or 3, I can't remember, they go forward in time like 1,000 years. So they just tried to change the concept of the show too much, trying to be different from Trek, but yet still connected. But I think Strange New Worlds does a much better job of connecting to the canon of Star Trek overall with the TOS references, but not in a way that feels like it's pandering. They're telling their own modern stories within this setting, but also connecting it to canon in a fun way for hardcore fans and people to be like, point out Easter eggs and whatnot.
Yeah. I'm also at a point now with Star Trek where I kind of don't care about canon anymore. Like, I just look at it as an influx, and they do a little bit in this season to explain that too, and we'll get to it when we get to the episodes. But I'm like, I don't care if First Contact is a new timeline, which then makes Archer be different, which then makes this be a different version. I don't really care about the continuity. I'll just headcanon it that this is on the First Contact timeline, but I really don't care.
Well, yeah, I would say the only different timeline in established canon is the Kelvin timeline.
Correct. And this is definitely not that.
Yeah, the way, I would headcanon it is, and they do, like you said, they explain it where anytime anyone time travels in Star Trek, small things change about the world, but it might not necessitate a whole new timeline. But that's why you can explain, like, oh, this actor looks different.
There's one timeline that's shifting kind of between states at all times.
So I like to look at that more than a bunch of branching timelines, like the popular multiverse trend of movies this year. But I think this show does a good job.
General continuity with some small details that you can complain about if you really, really want to. Yeah. Like the eugenics wars changing dates all the time, that kind of thing.
Yeah, but I would say this is what makes this show great is that it is telling its own stories, but still connecting to canon in a way that's fun. And I mean, the amount of references to TOS and the TOS characters, most people that are watching this, they're not going to care, but it's really for hardcore fans and for people that are like over, 60 years old, let's say, fans of the original series, but they do it in a respectful way. So it's like, if you compare it to something like Picard season 3, where it's just a lot of references to TNG and stuff, and I like that show as well, but I just think the references are done in a subtler way here and in a way that respects the source material, but doesn't like insist upon it. Like it's doing its own thing. So I guess that's what I'm trying to say.
Yeah, I've described this as kind of being, especially season 1, like the greatest hits of Star Trek. Like they only have 10 episodes a season, so it's generally all filler, no killer, and they'll look at what are these standard episodes types, the virus episode, the marooned episode, and we just kind of do that, but with these new characters and with kind of a new perspective and new character dynamics, but we kind of look at these tropes and then interpret them in a modern way. That's, in my opinion, this is the best show to get new fans into Star Trek. I would not tell anybody to do anything else but watch the first and second season of this.
I think you're
have an appetite.
Yeah, you're spot on there, Mike. And this is the other question I wanted to ask you guys out top. So Strange New Worlds, 10 episodes a season for season 1 and 2. That's kind of the new standard of the streaming television model. Back in the day, in the 90s and the 2000s, network television, the standard was 24, 25 episodes a season. Now, I wanted to ask you guys' opinion. Which one do you prefer? Because, in the old days, TNG, DS9, Voyager, you would get like 10 to 12 to 15 good episodes a season. And then, like I said, 10 episodes of filler or just, mediocre episodes or just really bad episodes sometimes. And I will say
bad
for labor
seasons
practices,
sometimes too.
Yeah. Making 10 episodes a season labor-wise, it's much less labor-intensive. So I would say back in the day, actors and crew were overworked a lot on these type of shows where they were forced to pump out 25 episodes a season. So I think that's one labor practice that has changed for the better since the 90s. Maybe in other ways, Hollywood hasn't changed for the better. But I do think this stream model, it's more feasible for writers. You don't have to come up with 25 good stories. And like you said, it's all killer, no filler.
Necessary, so to speak.
Yeah, so these 10 episodes in an old Star Trek season would be like the best episodes, but now it's just like you don't need the filler.
Yeah. Just to comment on what you said too, to tie into my thoughts on all that, I agree with you. Obviously, people were overworked back in the day, but the alternative perspective is, and what a lot of people are striking for now is the reduced seasons, cutting down on residuals, and also leading to, and what I maybe think is a positive, a lot of times what people will get is sort of these season 1, 10 episodes, season 1B, or kind of 2, 10 episodes, where it feels like everything is so tied together and comes out so quick. Because if you think about it, guys, there's not a long wait between season 1 of Strange New Worlds and season 2 of Strange New Worlds.
No.
Presumably, we're going to have a longer wait between season 3 with the strike and everything going on. Everybody get
they
their
have
bag,
said that,
right? But I'm fine having even a 1 or 2 year wait between seasons, where now in retrospect, I have, in my opinion, 20 episodes, which is almost a full season of a regular Trek show, and they're all fucking good. And I love that.
Yeah.
I wouldn't mind waiting 5 years to have what would equate to 2 incredible seasons of traditional Trek. Like that's fine by me.
But Mike, you couldn't go up to a 12, a 15. I wouldn't
want
feel
to. I'm
the
scared.
90s, Jacob.
I
want more, but I want good. That's because
I have two.
That's just a deadly small amount to me.
I have two ways of thinking about this, because I do think there were benefits to the older model, and it's interesting how much things have changed. Because back in the day, everything was like 20 to 25 episodes a season. Now almost everything, unless you're in half-hour sitcom or something, I mean, that's the new streaming model. It's like 8 to 10 episodes. It's more like a mini series than a full season.
Yeah.
But it's a lot easier to produce 10 really good episodes in a year than 25. First of all, I mean, you're 1.5 timesing your work with 25 episodes. But on the other side of it, I do like the older model sometimes, because when I'm binging old Star Trek shows, I just like to watch a bunch of episodes in a row.
Got
you know,
about
put it on
3
the
weeks of
background.
this. Yeah.
Yeah.
Not worried about
And
running out.
you know, sometimes those filler episodes, they can be fun. They might not be the best episodes, but they're still fun to watch and enjoyable. And even sometimes the really bad ones are fun to watch in a, you know, so bad it's good kind of way. So you lose that, but I do like the consistent quality of this show, and 10 episodes a season allows it to kind of maintain that consistency.
Yeah, yeah. And again, I think they're giving you a little bit of everything, because an episode that would be goofy and fun, you know, like a holodeck episode with Sherlock Holmes, we get that with a storybook episode, and we get some of those in this new season. So I don't know. I
Yeah.
think overall we do really like the show, though, and we're excited to talk about it.
No, yeah.
Yes.
And this show does a really good job of differentiating genres. Like you said, like each episode is a different Star Wars trope or genre, or Star Trek trope or
Fire this man.
genre.
I love Star Wars, dude. I fucking love Star Wars.
Live long and Han Solo.
Yeah, but that's what
That's
really
right.
struck me about like this season and the last season is how different each episode is. So you can have a fun musical episode, you can have
Sure.
a very serious war episode, you can have a trial episode, and you can have a Spock humorous episode, and they all feel like they fit in the same show.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I'll just say then, we're about to, you know, hit warp speed here. And we're going to talk about the whole season. We're just going to go one episode at a time. There'll be spoilers kind of between both seasons if we want to make comparisons, etc. But we're going to go episode by episode, let them know our general thoughts and kind of what Trek trope it's attempting and how we feel it accomplishes that. But hopefully you're excited to engage with that content with us. And if you're watching YouTube and wondering why the hell I'm wearing an apron, that story will also be told on the other side of this. So
Wow.
let's hit
ready.
it, guys.
Engage.
World Season 2.
We're back. Coming down from warp because we're talking Star Trek Strange New World Season 2, the Paramount Plus original. That's taken the world by storm. Do people watch Paramount
I like
Plus?
to think so.
I would like to hope so, because I find
Yeah.
this show very good. You're going to hear us gushing, I think.
Yes.
But I want to mention, because on YouTube I am wearing an apron, and I have a little Starfleet comm badge, and I want to just mention, you know, because we're all into this show and we live close enough. Captain Pike is fast becoming, and might be, my favorite Star Trek captain. This is close to becoming my favorite
gosh.
Star Trek show, but I don't know if we're there yet. But I love Christopher Pike. I love that he's kind of the empathetic captain. He's always wondering, how is my crew feeling? You know, he's kind of more like that, like hands-on. You know, what's your mental state and that kind of thing. Not maybe a wartime captain, but one of the things he does to bond with his crew is he cooks dinners for them. And I like to cook. So I was able to, through official channels, not going to dox anybody, but I was able to determine the make and the distributor of the apron that Pike actually wears on the show. It's from Canada. I'll put a link in the description because it's not an ad, but I was able to acquire it.
Authentic info from the show, though. Important to
From
point
people
out.
who work on the show, I was able to get the information. This is 100% the apron that was sourced for Anson Mountain. Anybody else wearing aprons on the show? So I was really excited to have a dinner party for the finale. I invited you guys over, and I 3D printed some Star Trek comm badges that you can see on YouTube as well.
Yes.
Hey,
and it was
we
a
got
great
science.
time.
There we go.
Yeah, our captain cooked for us. It was amazing. Yeah.
Yeah, so that's how we watched the finale of this. So that's the story behind Pike's apron. Link in the description. And as far as the Star Trek badges, you'll have to come to a dinner in person. Maybe you'll get one.
Well, yeah, and we don't live in a world where you can just use a little food replicator or whatever to just like beep, boop, boop, make your little meals. So, like when you're saying, you know, Pike making these meals is like a touching act of love or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
It is still in our time as well, because Mike, you invite us over, you take the time, and I gotta say, cook the best meal of my life. It was so goddamn good.
Oh,
so
thank
you
you.
for
That's very
that. Thank
kind
you
of
for
you.
these.
And thanks for helping. I
Loved
really
it,
appreciate
dog. Love you,
A
dog.
great time was
Yeah.
had by all.
Look at the positive
Yes,
energy
truly.
the show is creating, right, amongst friends. You know?
Yes.
So
Yes, we got very drunk on champagne and then watched the finale, but we will get there.
Yeah, we'll get there. So it's a long road getting from there to here. That's a different show, but you know,
Yes.
it's a good
That's
reference
right.
nonetheless. So I guess we could just hop in first episode then.
Yeah, let's hop in. So we'll go episode by episode, starting
Title,
with
what
episode
type of-
1.
What type of episode is it?
Spoilers, you know how
Yeah.
we do. We're going to talk about the whole thing, but the main thing is we're really going to break down a season that we fucking or a show that we fucking love.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
That's it.
Please.
So yeah, we have episode 1, The Broken Circle. Now this was
Mhm.
an episode, this was the season premiere, obviously. Kind of following a loose thread from the previous season, dealing with Laan Noonien Singh, security officer who goes off to. Now, Mike, remind me of what happened in season one.
There's a shared mining colony. It's like, human Klingon run it together. It's in, shared space. They have day shift, night shift, essentially. But she's there after getting the refugee girl home who was lost in a Gorn attack. But largely what this turns into is a classic trope, Star Trek trope, which we've seen in some of the movies with Chang. It's like there's a plot to create a false flag attack that'll create a war between the Federation and the Klingon Empire. So some of these Klingons are radical,
That's right.
and they're trying to steal a Federation ship to make it look like the Federation attacked the Klingons, and then it'll be a whole thing.
Sounds like another movie we just watched called Star Trek
wow.
Into Darkness.
Star Trek Into Darkness.
Correct me if I'm wrong here. Laan resigned from Starfleet at the end of season 1, correct? So she's sort of like in this like spy kind of flux mode, right?
Yeah, she was trying to get this
kinda
girl
off.
home.
She's on leave, I think, at the least.
Yeah.
I really gave up on trying to remember that synopsis halfway through, but
It's about it
appreciate
makes
Mike,
much
you
sense as
picking it
Ensign
up.
Row. But yeah. We'll paint with broad strokes too. Can I just say real quick, this whole season I think there's a lot for Laan, and I really like what they're doing, and we'll get there, but I really like this idea. Oh.
No, I was going to say I totally agree with you. Laan, I feel like, is the MVP of this season.
Yeah, spoilers for what we'll get into, but I think even as a general character, I really like them taking another stab at it, and I just realized this yesterday, is another stab at Tasha Yar, because we have a female security officer who has a traumatic backstory, doesn't really connect with people. I mean, she connects with a robot in TNG. Like, Laan has a hard time connecting with people, and I think we're taking another stab at this damaged, kind of traumatic backstory female security officer, and I just think it's cool that they're kind of getting to redeem that idea. And they're doing a great job this season to really flesh that out.
And she has to appear tough, like a badass for her job being the security officer, but also she's got a more emotional side, which we might see this season.
She's trying to protect that. Yeah, just like
and she's also got this stigma with her name being an ancestor of Khan Noonien Singh. So she's got to deal with that as well. So I'm totally into Laan.
Who in another
season.
timeline just tried to, he was part of a false flag plot, but in a different way. But yeah, so
Benedict
that's this episode.
Cumbercon.
Yeah, we learned about the Dr. Mbenga and Chapel's history in the Klingon War skirmishes that were happening.
That's
they have
right.
combat experience. There's a drug that they get all juiced up. But Colin, season premiere, there's a lot of action, some familiar elements. How did you feel about this way to kick it off?
And I believe we definitely referenced the first 2 or maybe the first 3 on either a Watcha or one of our previously recorded Star Trek movies, where I believe we kind of all gave the same feelings, although Jacob will probably defend like, oh, I love this season the whole time, as I believe you have off pod. But feeling kind of cold initially. I remember thinking the first one was like, okay, we've got some threads to tie up here. We set some stuff up at the end of season 1. Let's just pay that off, right?
Yeah, I like this episode. It's not my favorite of the season or top 3 even, but it was a good episode, and I think that just speaks to the consistency again of the show, where it's like even a lesser episode in the season, even if it is a season premiere, it's still good.
Yeah, and there's things that in hindsight, like when we first saw this, and I'm like, okay, and Mbenga's got like a super drug that him and Chapel can take, and they're beating up a ton of Klingons. I'm like, this is kind of crazy, though. Like, this is kind of crazy. Like, are we going too far? But then when you learn the genesis of that and the backstory, which we will in a very good episode later in the season, I'm like, okay, this is all making sense in hindsight. So there's a lot of threads that kind of lead to things, and maybe you just didn't spot it the first week you watched it.
Getting a lot of hints.
That's a great way to put it.
DS9. My favorite, with the war stuff. I mean, the Dominion War is a big part of that show, and the episode that we'll talk about in a little bit really feels that way as well.
The Mbenga Chapel episodes are weirdly they're tied to that DS9 energy a little bit, where it's kind of conflict and the war and this and that.
The Federation, Starfleet in times of war is not a thing that we see a lot in Star Trek. So it's usually we see it in flashback to the Klingon War, or with DS9, you had the Dominion War. That was like a big event where the Starfleet was actively in war, which is they're normally not. And then even in that show, you had the Cardassian Bajoran conflicts, and you have like people remembering what that was like and stuff. So Yeah, I get a
Yeah.
lot of DS9 vibes from these kind of episodes.
Scratches your itch, especially one we'll get
Yeah.
to later. But I think it's a solid opener. There's a lot of action. I think that's what they want. We want to get people in with the flashing lights and colors and jangle the keys. Look at all this stuff. Because the next episode, if we're ready to cruise, anything else on episode 1? Pretty
Just
good.
want to mention
false flag episode. Go ahead, Jacob.
Yeah, one other
Sure.
thing about it, the Klingons. This is the first time I think we see Klingons
Mhm.
in this show. And obviously we see a very different designed Klingon in Discovery. So we're seeing a more TNG-esque Klingon with their own kind of maybe some modern changes and stuff to kind of update the look, so it still keeps faithful to that TNG look. So I like to see that.
Sure.
Yeah, and they started crossing over the TNG Klingons with Kirk in the movies. So
Yeah.
there's always been a sliding scale of what Klingons look like too, like many
Right.
things in Star Trek. So
Well, there's
yeah,
a
I think
loose
it looks good.
explanation of something that happened to them between
We don't talk about it.
TOS and yeah. But really it's just updates in makeup and prosthetic technology. But you love to see the Klingons. They're always a good, and this is
Always
we
good.
know eventually they're going to become allies of Starfleet in the Federation, but right now they're kind of one of the biggest adversaries at Starfleet.
Right, we have a peace
They're
treaty
kind of
or
a
something.
standoff, a sort of Cold War, if you will.
Oh,
Yes. And the next time we see Klingons, it will be a truly shocking moment. So
Yeah.
that is fun to set
That's
up
right.
as well.
they're using all of the iconography so well. So it's a good start.
Yeah.
Classic.
We had
stuff.
Romulans last season. You love to see
Klingons
it.
to kick it
but
off here. We had Gorn in the Memento Mori last season. They're using a lot of these, more and less familiar
TOS,
than we have.
yeah.
Yeah.
So, episode 2,
Mhm.
ad aspera per astra.
No, ad astra per
Ad
aspera.
astra
To the
per
stars
aspera.
through hardship. Yes.
There you go. And Mike, do you
Wow.
want to kind of take it away
Yeah.
with the synopsis on this one?
I mean, this is our classic we had at the end of last season. Number 1, Una Chin Riley is found out to be an Illyrian, having lied that she had genetic modifications in order to join Starfleet. That's highly illegal, thanks to the eugenics wars started by Khan Noonien Singh.
That's
So
right.
she is at her tribunal to see if she can stay in Starfleet. Pike risks his own life even to go and find her old friend and Galaxy's greatest lawyer. I can't remember the character's name, but the actress does a great job. But they're kind of they have a rocky relationship due to how Una left the planet. So there's a little bit of history there, but she's going to do her best job lawyering for Una, her old friend. And it's kind of, the classic courtroom episode. We're getting a measure of a man kind of vibe here.
So I guess here's my issue. And I think I can finally verbalize what my grievance with these first 2 episodes is. Jacob, you saying that last one felt so DS9 heavy.
Yeah.
And I've heard you guys say that this second one feels so TNG heavy. I like Strange New Worlds because I like Strange New Worlds. I don't need these two very influenced by other Trek episodes.
I would say almost every episode of Strange New Worlds is influenced by past Trek episodes. That's kind of, I feel like that's part of the identity of the show, where I wouldn't say it's derivative, but it is kind of beholden to earlier Star Trek tropes.
Well, it's directly influenced by those old scientists. I
That's
won't
right.
say their actual names now.
And those new guys, TNG.
Yeah.
Those new guys.
Those new guys. I like that.
Yeah.
We like those old scientists. We like those new guys. If you had said that, I really would have been happy.
And those Deep Space Nine over there. There's like, 9 of them. They just
deep,
live out there.
Deep space morons.
But what, I will say, to be an annoying Star Trek nerd about it, I'll point out, what old episodes each episode of this season reminds me of. This one, in addition to Measure of a Man and other trial type episodes in TNG, the whole eugenic or the whole genetically modified angle was also dealt with in DS9 with Dr. Julian Bashir, who, like Una, was genetically modified as a baby, unbeknownst to him. And there's a whole and there's a whole trial episode about that, where because if you're technically not allowed to join Starfleet if you have genetic modification. So him finding out,
shoot lasers out of your eyes.
Yeah, he just thought he was a really good doctor, really smart guy.
Makes him really smart. He can shoot darts with perfect accuracy when he plays darts. But anyways, so
it's
very fun.
another DS9 TNG inspired episode, like you're saying, Colin.
Yeah.
Sure.
And this, I enjoy it a lot. Again, Measure of Man is probably my favorite TNG episode. It might be my favorite Star Trek episode. I probably watch it the most. So this isn't quite as good as that, but I think it's doing a very good job at doing its own version where we have conflict between the lawyer and Una, and the lawyer's not only trying to get Una's sentence reduced or get her freed, she's trying to like get Starfleet to see how it's being prejudiced, maybe, and like that we can ease up. So she has to use at the end of the episode, she uses a loophole to get Una instated because she sought asylum, and they have to grant asylum to somebody who's fleeing a persecution state, and that's what was happening in Illyria. So she uses a loophole. It doesn't get all Illyrians able to be in Starfleet, but it helps Una be allowed to stay instated, and that's kind of where we leave the status quo.
I will say it's better done than the Picard very unsubtle android rights former
like
Borg people kind of angle where androids are completely outlawed in Picard time because there was a terrorist attack.
Oh, in the
blah,
Picard,
blah. Yeah.
So, but Jacob, remember when we talked about this originally, I was like, there's like 5 episodes of the Orville where the plot is the lawyer reveals like, haha, I have the same thing as the person I'm defending. And you're like, yes. And you know what I was thinking? Rebecca Romijn. I want your opinion on this. And her as an actor. I think we should hit all the key people who have like, this is their episode. Lon has more. We'll get to her. But like Rebecca Romijn as Una in this episode. Yeah. But you know who she reminds me of, Jacob? Who is that lady who plays the number 1 on that and from Friday Night Lights? What is her name?
Oh, Adriana Palicki,
right? Adriana, whatever her name is.
That's right, yeah.
If she looks at Rebecca Romijn, that's like as good as she could hope her career kind of goes, right? Sure.
I think she's great. She's good in the Orville. Like you're talking to probably maybe the biggest Orville fan here.
Sure.
I think Orville, there's episodes of Orville that are as good as anything Strange New Worlds has done. So I like that show a lot.
There's not a chance that's true, my friend.
That's absolutely true.
There's not a chance
they do a really good arc about basically transgenderism that I think is really, really good.
And there's some did that too.
Yeah, but this does it in an interesting way, and I think the Orville. I'll defend the Orville any day because I think it's.
I'm sleeping on the Orville big time.
You've shouted that out before. Yeah, I can't imagine it. It was the smugness.
Before Strange New Worlds. It was the best new Trek property since Enterprise.
Right.
And hey, I love Scott Grimes.
Yeah.
You know how excited I was to see him in Oppenheimer.
It'll have to tide me over, I guess, while we wait.
If you've never seen the Orville, I would check it out. Give it a couple episodes because it starts as more comedic. Like, I think I've talked about this before, but Seth MacFarlane pitched it as a more comedic satire of a Star Trek type show when really his hidden agenda was just to make a Star Trek show. So after a couple episodes, the humor gets a lot less cringy, I would say. At some points, I do find it cringy, but once you get into lore and the world building of this world that's like Star Trek but different because they can't use the IP, they have new alien races.
Do you think he watches? Do you think
he listens to this podcast?
Seth MacFarlane?
Yeah, probably.
Well, yes, he certainly does. Do you think he watches Strange New Worlds and every night just like throws his TV down and breaks it when the episode's over, and then like his butler like puts a new TV up every day?
Yeah, maybe.
Yep, he's so frustrated it wasn't him. Let him guest direct an episode.
I don't know. I think Orville.
Yes, that would be interesting, Mike. But hold on, I do want Mike. What is your take on Mystique? What do you think of Rebecca Romijn as Una?
Yeah, I think she's great. I really do, especially as the season goes on. Like, man, because at first it's like the end of season 1, Una's gone and La'an is gone. I'm like, damn it, we're gonna have 2 seasons where we have like some fill-in character, and immediately episode 1. La'an's back, episode 2, Una's back. And it's like, okay, that's good because I like both those characters, and I think Rebecca Romijn's doing great here. Yeah.
Yeah, I never really thought of the end of season 1 that they were writing those characters off. I thought it was more just going to be kind of story threads to pick up next season.
Cliffhangers.
I guess it was a way that if they wanted to leave the show, they could have written them off.
Yeah, I don't know if Rebecca Romijn wants to do Star Trek, but after seeing this whole season, it seems like she does.
I hope
interviews,
so.
It seems like she does, and she's great at it.
Una is just such an interesting character because obviously she has to be sort of the taskmaster and rule setter on the bridge of the ship as the number one. And she is typically kind of steely, and obviously she's Illyrian. She's got all this like weird, oh, I have all these hangups from this. But she has two, I think, very genuine moments. I think maybe both with Spock that are incredibly sensitive this season, where she'll like put her hand on his shoulder and be like, I'm going to tell you some sort of like kind of upsetting news, and like I'm kind of gauging how you're going to react to this. That like Rebecca Romijn kind of like crushes, and I've never seen her like do that level of work before. So
she's a great, I think, foil for the Pike character, because he's like, I'm affable and like you can talk to me. And then she's like, we got to stay on task. Like he can be good cop, she can be bad. It's like the director and she's the first AD. The director can be kind of cool, but then she has to keep everybody on board.
Typically, her updates in these sort of like all hands on deck meetings are like, this is what Starfleet is doing, or said that they have to do. And like nobody else is considering that. It's very interesting.
I will say, I don't dislike Una, but I think she's probably my least favorite member of the main cast, I'll say, in terms of characters, just because I like the other characters more.
Fair enough.
I mean, maybe I would put Pelia below her, but other than that, yeah, she's probably...
Yeah, we also get Pelia in episode 1. She's our new engineer. Should introduce Pelia. She's like alien species that can live forever, but it's not a Guinan species, just another person who lives for a long time.
Yeah, she's not El-Orian, but yeah, she lives a long time.
She's been like the teacher of Una. She lives forever, and she like is bored at Starfleet and helps them steal the ship. And then when they do a good job... solving the case of the week, she's allowed to stay and nobody gets in trouble. So she's just...
And this is, of course... character played by Carol Kane, kind of a very well-known, more comedic actress generally, who's been in a lot of stuff. So I feel like she's like Hemmer last season. She's kind of coming in for a brief amount of time to be replaced maybe by a character that we'll meet later in the season.
Right now she's got the Dr. Plaki, where it's like we have a character that everyone kind of likes more. We'll replace it with a different curly-haired lady, and we'll figure it out.
Yeah, I thought they were kind of treating the chief engineer position as like the defense against the dark arts professor in Harry Potter, where it's a different person every year.
That would be a cool gimmick. I would like that.
Yeah, but so that's what's going on. I think to wrap episode 2 though, pretty good trial episode. Mileage may vary based on your taste and those sort of things. So episode 3, Jacob, where we got?
Episode 3, we got, you know what, one of my favorite, if not my favorite episode of the season, and it's called Tomorrow and Tomorrow and Tomorrow.
Here we go.
What do we got? What is this classic Trek trope? The old time travel shenanigans, right?
Yes, time travel. Now, readers, listeners, if you've ever watched those old scientists, TOS, check out an episode called City on the Edge of Tomorrow. Consider one of, if not the best episode of the original series, where Spock and Kirk go back in time in a similar situation. So that's kind of riffing on that. Similar to how there was that one episode last season that riffed on the Romulan episode of TOS. Anyways, tomorrow.
Balance of Terror. Yeah.
Balance of Terror, that's right.
So, yeah, we get a time travel episode. We have La'an getting sent back for hijinks with alternate timeline Kirk. Is that right?
Yeah, so there's something in the timeline happens to change the present. La'an is the only one not affected by that. She goes into the bridge. It's not Captain Pike there anymore. It's Captain James Tiberius Kirk.
That classic reveal Trek. Whoa, something's wrong here. Yeah.
Right. And we saw, of course, Paul Wesley.
Yep, Paul Wesley.
Playing this role in one episode, the Balance of Terror episode last season, in an alternate kind of future. So now we're seeing an alternate present and past episode. And La'an and Kirk, they kind of have to go on this journey back through time. It's an unlikely pairing at first. And they go back to Toronto in present day 2020, whatever, right?
Yeah, and there's supposedly some big, like, there's a date coming that it's a looming date that they know there's some big terrorist attack or something terrible is going to happen. A bomb's going to go off, ticking clock, and they got to stop it because they know, we're from the future. So in 2 days or whatever, we need to stop this thing. And So it involves a little bit of intrigue and a little bit of hijinks.
Of course, this
too.
is also getting into the temporal Cold War kind of angle of Enterprise. We see
And this is where we explain away a lot of the continuity issues because Enterprise does introduce a temporal Cold War,
It's cool.
Yes,
Only Christopher Nolan has ever said that phrase out loud.
That's what Tenet is about.
It is.
But
wow.
No, but like there's a whole temporal prime directive, which is different than the regular prime directive, where you're not supposed to fuck with the timeline, blah blah blah.
It's like the TVA. Like now that people have seen Loki, that's what they were doing in the Enterprise. There's a whole division of people who are supposed to protect.
There's a division of Starfleet who is like the time agents. You also see them in DS9. They're kind of like Section 31, where they just pop up and cause problems sometimes, or try to fix problems, but sometimes they can be antagonistic to present day. Anyways, tomorrow they go back to present day Toronto. They're trying to figure out what they're supposed to be doing, kind of growing closer, Kirk and La'an, right, as this adventure goes on, becoming friends, and eventually they find out that what they're here to stop is time terrorists who want to kill Khan Noonien Singh as a baby or as a child to create a situation
where the Federation never exists, because Khan and his eugenics war is what galvanizes the rest of humanity to band together and become like, we need to be more spacefaring. We can't be having this going on. No more eugenics, and that we get the global society as a result of that. But if that never happens, no Starfleet Romulans take over. So that's what the Romulans are trying to do here. So it's Romulans in disguise as humans on this mission, and it kind of gets into the age-old question of, if you could go back in time and kill baby Hitler, would you do it? Or also, if you knew that by killing baby Hitler, you've created a situation where the modern world is not shaped in the same way, and things are actually worse in present day. Butterfly so you have effect almost,
so you have to keep baby Hitler alive.
And with La'an Noonien Singh, it's like, well, I'm killing my great grandpa, will I even exist, kind of thing too.
Right.
So it's time traveler's paradox with that baby Hitler vibe. And then the Romulans are pissed off because they were stuck there for like 20 years. They're like, this was supposed to happen earlier. The timeline got fucked up, and I've just been stuck here as a human, and I hate it, and I hate you, and that's where the animosity is coming from.
And very funnily, this explains a loophole in canon that fans have been trying to create like headcanon around for years, which is that the eugenics wars were supposed to take place in the 90s, right? They're referenced in every Star Trek show before.
When they were written in the 60s, the 90s was a long way off.
It was the future, right? Yeah, but then in Voyager, of course, they go back to present day 90s in San Francisco. They meet Sarah Silverman. But there's no eugenic wars.
Excuse me?
They go back to San Francisco and they meet Sarah Silverman. Okay?
The Rock is in Voyager too, to be fair.
Yes.
Okay.
So, that makes sense.
But when they go back to San Francisco and meet Sarah Silverman, there's no eugenics wars in sight. So that always was a big loophole of like, wait, isn't Khan supposed to be like fighting the eugenics wars right now? But now with this, something messed up and they had to wait 20 years, kind of explains that, I guess.
Yeah, the reason
if you really care about
don't
that
match is just don't think about it.
Sure.
Yeah.
That's cool.
But it explains it more than it before.
Yeah.
Here's what I like about this episode. Now, what did you say it's called? It's City on the Edge of Tomorrow Forever. What is it?
City on the Edge of Tomorrow for TOS,
City on the Edge of Tomorrow. Now, that is, I believe, an episode written by very famous writer Harlan Ellison, right?
Yes.
Who is like an incredible sci-fi writer who wrote some of the best Twilight Zones, some of the best Outer Limits, of course, who would write some of the best Star Treks. Now, he, like his contemporaries, Philip K. Dick, which I think this episode feels very much like as well, would have these like very kinetic, very weird moral problems that would happen like out of nowhere with a thing. So the fact that a guy shows up shot and goes, ooh, take this thing. I'm from this thing. If you grab this thing, you won't go back in time. See ya. And then he dies. And La'an's like, what the fuck is going on? And she's suddenly thrust into an alternate dimension. And then the past with someone else and that I think it very purposefully does, Jacob, follow that question of killing baby Hitler, which was like a thing people were already saying in the 40s. Like by the 60s, like it was something people were exploring in their writing.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like wiping out this threat that ruined so many lives and changed lives. Same way now people are like, what if Donald Trump wasn't president? What would have happened? Like even if you're like that close to it, you think about these things. And I just think this episode just does like a remarkable job of tapping into that style of writing, and it's thrilling. And let's talk about Laong. I believe her name is Christina Chong, correct? The actress who plays her. She fucking crushes this episode. And when she is crying in a bunker on a bed next to a little boy that she's thinking about blowing his brains out, it is like, my God, you are just like killing it right now.
What she's great at selling, Christina Chong, the actress, is the trauma. And like when, you know, Laon's in this moment, it's like she has suffered so much in present day, so much stigmatization just because of her last name, just because of her lineage. She hasn't even done shit. And she suffered just for who she was. She suffered living through a Gorn hatchery. And even after that, people just don't accept her because of her last name. So it's like, I can take out this guy that is a part of my burden, but it's also a child. And to play that conflict and that pain, she's crushing it. She crushes it the whole season. Great job.
It's like
the relief that she's brought. Sorry, Jacob, real quick, but just the 1 second where she's in the car with Paul Wesley, who says, "What's your name, by the way?" Laon. And she says, "Wow, it's kind of famous." He goes, like, "You've got a famous name. What are you talking about?" And like she says, Noonan Singh, and it means nothing to him. Like the relief she feels in that moment, she plays it so well. She's great. What did you think of her performance, Jacob?
Because he in that alternate timeline, they are at war with the Romulans because Khan never existed, blah blah blah. So he doesn't know who Khan is, but he's also from a warlike timeline where the Federation doesn't exist, and it's not all about peace and exploration. So it's obviously worse timeline.
She says, "Oh yeah, your brother works on my ship." He's like, "He's alive."
Yeah, he's
so
like,
in his timeline, his
brother's
alive,
alive,
dead.
Yeah,
that's right. That's why he gets. We also, can I say real quick, skipped over a chess montage where Kirk is hustling people to make money by playing street chess.
Right.
I wanted to ask you: is the implication that just anyone in Star Trek, because they're in the future, would be really good at chess?
Yes,
it's
actually,
like
because
to them.
they play like 3D chess where there's like multiple levels, and they have all these advanced new games. So basic chess to them is like a children's
for babies.
Game, you know?
They play what was that thing in DS9? Catamaran.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. Dabo.
But they're thinking, they're so ahead technologically that chess is easy to them.
But
or maybe Kirk's just
so
really
funny.
good at
and
chess.
his just idea like, wait, I'm a genius.
I need to make money. Yeah, I do like that. Like we need to get clothes, we need to make money, and he just hustles a bunch of people.
How do people make money in this time is what he says out loud.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, it's like the episode, it's like the voyage home where they go back to San Francisco and they don't understand how things are in the present.
People like in LDS.
Does that Kirk play chess? I can't even remember.
He should. He should have. Yeah.
I wish he would have.
I will say, so this is like, not only are you you have to not kill baby Hitler, but baby Hitler is also your great grandfather. Your name is
your last name's
Jacob Hitler. Yeah.
Yeah, geez.
Which is not my name, by the way.
That you did yourself. Yes, thank you.
But the conflict is that she wants to kill him because she knows that he's a bad person, and she could save so many lives by doing that, but also be jeopardizing the future for the worse. So she has to resist the temptation to kill him the ends justify the means once again.
Are we any better than the Romulans if I go through with this too and kill a child? There's a lot of, and I don't think it gives you the moral answer. It's a difficult thing that scholars struggle with, but the episode handles it in an interesting way that keeps you thinking about it afterwards, and the performance is really strong.
Right. And by the way, the City on the Edge of Tomorrow, the conflict is that basically Kirk meets a lady that he likes, who's a nice lady, of course, as he does. But then they find out that this lady is going to die in a car accident in 2 weeks or so. But they have to not warn her about it because, they'll change the future in a way that's bad. Yeah. So Kirk has to let this woman that he starts to have feelings for die because of reasons.
Yeah.
Supposedly the primary inspiration for Tarantino's unmade Star Trek movie. What do you guys think that would have been
Wow.
like?
Oh man, I could
Now,
just
would this be
imagine
with the
dialogue.
Kelvin cast, or what kind of cast are we talking here?
I think he probably liked Kirk, so I would imagine so. I don't think he would be like, and it's got to be, what's one of his regulars?
It would be
It's
so
got to be Morgan Freeman.
No, it'd be
Right.
so reference heavy. I don't think it would be good.
Yeah.
All he does
Yeah.
is homage everything into one thing. That's like his
Yeah.
deal.
Yeah.
I heard that he wanted to do like a
Like grittier.
no, like an episode where they like are in the hollow suite, and
Oh.
it's like a 1940s gangster hollow suite episode as a movie
Oh,
or something. So
that's-
No, we
Like a
Wow,
saw
I
the
want to make a
GMG
Star Trek movie
movies.
that's not Star Trek.
No.
Yeah.
Yeah, we already.
so
got
he
the
wanted to
Tommy
kind
gun.
of anyways,
But yeah,
Should we
we
talk
also have to say there's a romance subplot. They develop feelings for each other. This version of Kirk and La'an, because there's no stigma towards her, she's like, I can just be myself. And he sees her, he looks at her with the way people have never looked at her and sees the true La'an, and she's never experienced
Yes.
that. And they kind
And
of
let
have a,
me-
have a
Lon
thing.
definitely fucks him, right?
Yeah, they definitely
I think
get
in the
down.
hotel, yeah. And let me go on a little rant about why I like this Kirk, because
Paul Wesley's doing a great job.
yeah,
I think he's doing an
I think
amazing job.
it gets an essential thing about Kirk that a lot of people kind of misunderstand or take to an exaggerated level. But Kirk being this sort of ladies' man, and we even see it in the Kelvin, of course, where he's
Mhm.
sleeping around and whatnot, and that's kind of his main personality
Are
trait.
those cat ladies a reference to the Cybok movie, by the way? They have to be. Could
I
be.
love that. I gotta say that Alice Eve moment has kind of soured me on that franchise. But please
Yeah.
keep your thoughts
Yeah.
going, Jacob.
Yeah.
But so that's been exaggerated, correct? But he's
yes,
more. He's a
but I think
chess
what
player.
this-
Yeah.
No, what this gets right about him is he's not just like this like womanizer going around just sleeping with people willy-nilly. He's really good at connecting with people. He's a great listener. So he wants to get to know you, and because of that, people are automatically like attracted to him and interested in him just because he's like a nice guy who's a good listener. And so I think that's kind of what modern Kirk should be. Like he's not just going around like sleeping with whoever he wants. Like he's
Right,
He
right.
connects with you on a level where you're like, oh yeah, of course I would like this guy. Like he's acting interested in my past and stuff. You know what I mean? Like he's
It's like
Wow,
not
yeah.
superficial. Yeah.
yeah, but we get lines too where it's like nobody's hitting on anybody. We're just talking. Like I don't know what. Like he's like,
Yes.
whoa, ease up. You know, we're just chatting. I'm just personable.
But because of
right?
his reputation of, because he's so good at connecting with people, everyone just assumes he's like trying to hit on them or romantically interested right away. But like we see him connect with so many people in this season in the main crew, like Uhura, and getting to know Spock better and everything.
This
So
guy
we
named
see
Spock,
this
yeah.
personality
It's several
coming out.
moments this season. It'll be interesting to see how many they do, but this is like the most Kirk we're getting in a single episode. So it is good to take a pause here and kind of take a look at how
Yeah.
that goes down.
And again,
probably should not
fake Kirk.
have fake alternate timeline Kirk, but yeah, just
Yeah. So I like Paul Wesley a lot as Kirk,
He's
and he's really
great.
winning me over to
Very
the point
charming.
where, he may be better than Chris Pine as much as I think Chris Pine.
the
I
Spock
like him
ship
as an
has
actor.
sailed, but
Yeah.
Kirk is becoming a close race.
I think Chris Pine just really looks at the role as a movie star role. I really think he just sees it as like, and of course I'm Kirk, I'm the lead. Whereas like, you're right about what Paul Wesley's doing here, because he does feel like the leader in the 2 minutes of screen time he gets every other episode. So that's like a great,
I do
I think the
think,
empathy is really the quality to highlight, dude. I
That's
think-
great.
Yeah. And he also feels like the problem with the Kelvin universe, it's so kind of over dramatic.
Yeah.
Pine Kirk spends most of his time going between, being demoted to being promoted to captain to being demoted again. It's like we never get a sense of who he is as an actual Starfleet officer doing
Right,
his
yeah.
work like as a responsible person. So I think this Kirk, he's winning me over a lot. And as much as I like Chris Pine, I think I
Yes.
like him more in other roles maybe than
Right.
in the Kelvin.
And I've
movies.
rewatched a couple episodes of the original series, since we finished this thing. And there's some things Paul Wesley will do with his body, or like he'll say a line when he's not looking at someone. Like he'll do these things that Shatner would do, like physically, like in the way he kind of, personifies like with his body, these poses and holding his arm, and like it's not doing a Shatner impression, but it's doing kind of that with his body, and it's like
Right.
really, really cool that he can make it
That's
his own, but
really
it feels like
interesting.
that. Yeah, so
Yeah.
keep an eye out for it if you watch more TOS. But I think it's a great little time travel episode. I think some people will think this is their favorite. A lot of good stuff from Lon, and yeah, that's tomorrow.
Tomorrow.
Now we're gonna get a little goofy.
Next episode.
4.
That's right. So we have Among the Lotus Eaters.
Shout out to the Odyssey. You know, name of one of the chapters in that book.
Sure, Hamlet
okay.
was the last one, right? Tomorrow, and tomorrow.
Oh wow, I didn't even realize
I think
that.
so.
Yeah, that's great.
Yeah, and this is another great episode where they're going to this planet. Some weird. Well,
Is this Rigel 7 or
So
which planet
Rigel-
is this?
Yes.
what's that? Rigel 7? Is that what it is?
I can't
I
remember
believe
the
it
name of
is.
the planet.
Rigel 4 or Rigel 7? I was going to say 4.
Rigel 7. You're right. Yeah,
Nice.
the site of an
Rigel
earlier
7.
unsuccessful mission.
Ding ding ding.
Yeah, so they were trying to recover this guy that was a yeoman on an earlier Starfleet ship. But some weird side effects happen to the landing party where they start forgetting things. They start having amnesia. And they find out that this yeoman has apparently crowned himself emperor of this planet and taken over these kind of simpletons that live on this planet and is controlling
Broke
them.
the
in
Prime
ways-
Directive.
Yeah.
So this is a take on a couple Star Trek tropes. I think primarily it's a TOS, standard kooky planet with a kooky thing about it.
Yeah.
Right? There's a situation with the planet, its atmosphere, it's going to make us do weird things, but it's also a weird take on, fittingly enough, after Tomorrow, Space Seed and Wrath of Khan, because we have the fallout of a failed mission where, but in the past, this crew member got left.
So true.
Pike thought he was dead, but he left.
Yeah.
And then now that guy is upset and seeking revenge on the crew who left him there.
This is
Right.
City Alpha 5.
This is
Totally.
Rigel 7. Yeah.
But also
I
wasn't
wish you would have said that.
the guy he wasn't on Pike's ship though, right? It was a different ship that had landed there earlier. Or no, it was Pike's ship.
Pike feels personally responsible.
They were
for
following
leaving
up
3 people
on that
mission.
to die, not knowing one was left behind alive. Yes.
And then they
I will
see
say
a big
this also,
Starfleet symbol and they're like, oh shit.
Yeah.
We fucked up.
This reminds me in some ways of a DS9 episode, which I like a lot, where they're all on the ship and they have some kind of they're examining an unoccupied planet for scientific reasons, right? They're doing analysis. There's some kind of temporal thing in space causes their ship to crash land, and as they crash land, the previously unoccupied planet is now occupied, but it's all occupied by ancestors of all the crew members because of some temporal stuff that happened. The crew landed back in time, realized they were stranded on this planet, had no way to communicate with Starfleet, so they're just like, well, I guess we have to live the rest of our lives here. All intermarried, had babies and everything, and over the generations, there's also some weird stuff with this planet where it kind of experiences time differently. This is kind of a long explanation of this DS9 episode.
It's kind of a brigadoon. Sure.
Yeah, but anyways, they land on this planet. It's now occupied by thousands of people, but they're all distant ancestors of the crew members. It's a really good episode, so I would recommend checking that out. But it kind of reminds me of this episode.
It gives me vibes of also like a sound stage. I don't know if this is volume, but it feels like a TOS. Like we just put some foam rocks up, we painted the wall purple, and I like that.
Sure,
it feels
yeah.
like that. And the kooky thing here,
nice and
something,
tight.
Yeah, it's classic, and it looks like a castle because the guy took it over. It's like sort of medieval-ish themed, but the atmosphere fucks with your brain. If you don't wear this special hat, you'll forget your memories at the end of every night. So they meet a local who tells them, oh, you'll learn to get used to the forgetting, and we don't have our memories. That way we don't have sorrow, because if we remember the hurtful stuff, that sucks. So I'd rather not remember anything. Then they're arguing, well, we want to remember shit, so there's a little bit of that conflict. We have to face down with the yeoman, but that's kind of the general arc,
You need a special lead-lined or some kind of alloy helmet or hat so that the radiation of this planet can't affect you. I thought this is another one of my favorites of the season because it had a great sort of moral behind it. I love the idea of your life is essentially made up of your memories. Like losing your memories means losing the only record you have of your life that you lived. which is why something like dementia and Alzheimer's is like so existentially
Yes.
scary for me. Because you're losing your sense of identity, your sense of self. So I thought this episode was really interesting.
Yeah, you get the crew waking up like not recognizing that they're even friends. Like they're in a cage together and they don't know who they are, and then they start to learn.
Yes.
I think I was a healer. Like I think I was a doctor. I think I know how to do this. There's
So
a lot
scary.
of shadows of it's scary. You're right.
And for instance, if you had maybe a loved one that died in the past, you might think it's better to forget so that you don't remember the emotions that you felt in the mourning, but it actually isn't, because that memory is the only thing that keeps them alive in your mind. So
They live on in us, right? You know. You're alive until the last person remembers you passes. That kind of thing.
That's right. So it was a very touching episode to me.
Yeah,
it has a good ensemble. It's mainly La'an, Dr. Mbenga, and the landing party. And then I guess if I had to say who the lead of the episode is, it's kind of a Christopher Pike episode. It's kind of our first where the captain's kind of in charge.
Because for the first couple episodes,
3
he
episodes,
was also
not really involved
that much. I thought maybe he was shooting something to start this schedule or something, where he wasn't available on set all the time.
I almost wonder, Jacob, if he happened to enter a multiverse that was quite mad around this time.
Man, maybe. He's not
whispered
a
single word. Yeah.
Yes. And if you guys recall the setup, it shouldn't be a Christopher Pike episode, but of course, as a test pilot, he's in fact stepping in for Ortegas, who has to stay on the ship. Now, let's say real quick.
Yeah.
Ortegas, not my favorite character. Will somebody please shout out the actor? I do not have their name.
I'll pull it. Make your point.
Just has not been featured as much as the other characters.
Navia.
Melissa Navia, thank you. Erica Ortegas, who, as we learn in this episode, she is the pilot of the ship.
She flies.
She drives the ship. She flies the ship.
She drives
you
the
guys
ship. She flies the ship.
You guys weren't huge fans of her. I always thought she was
We just
fine.
never had a chance to connect. I don't know what you mean when you say just the 2 seconds of banter she got every season 1 episode where she'd be like, "Hey, by the way,
black
Captain,
hole
as
of
you're
death?"
leaving."
Sure.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
It's like, oh, laser.
The thing is, not every traditionally in Star Trek, not every cast member gets like the most to do. Like sometimes you're more of a background. Like Mitchell, the woman that sits next to her,
she
who's
gets
just
to
kind
lead
of there.
things.
In the
Oh,
background.
that character has a name.
Yeah,
she gets to do stuff in the storybook episode, and that's it. She's like the guard.
Yes, she's kind
That's a
of
realistic.
That's
a realistic aspect to me of if you're working on a ship. There's going to be other people that are just there in the background that maybe aren't that important in the story.
Back to the original argument, if we had more episodes, we might get to know these characters more. But I'm happy with this episode because it's maybe the biggest Ortegas episode for the season / the show.
Large.
No. No, there's what about there's one episode where she's featured pretty prominently, which is the one where, what's it called? I gotta look.
I mean, even the finale, she gets to go
even
to a
though
planet,
you have to look it up is proving
Lost in
my
Translation.
point that it is
She was a big part of Lost in Translation.
Okay.
That's the one where she remembers that she drives the ship.
That's right. Okay, so we'll put a pin in that. But
she will come back to say that once more. But this episode in particular, where we find out that because the crew on the ship is like, well, maybe if we go closer to this big dumbass glowing meteor, everything will be okay. And they do. And in fact, that is the thing that is making everyone lose their minds. So on the ship, they are losing their memories too. She has a sequence that is so horrifying where the camera stays on her as she sort of has ship legs. Things are bad. The ship is taking so much meteor damage. Nobody knows who they are. She doesn't know who she is. She hears the computer start talking and is guided to her room. And she looks out at this big, beautiful window, and she thinks everything's going to be okay. And a giant meteor crashes into the ship, and she curls up screaming, "I just want to be safe. I just want to be safe."
Yeah.
It is so relatable to somebody just having like a nervous breakdown or just like high anxiety attack.
Also, Colin,
absolutely.
You're completely right. I was confusing that scene with a different episode. So I thought that scene happened in a different episode. So you were
It's this
100%
episode.
right. That's
No,
this
yeah,
episode.
This episode.
Yes.
I fly the
It's
ship.
the
That's where
biggest
line comes
Ortegas
from.
episode. I
That's
fly the
right.
ship. She says
That's
it over
right.
and
She
over.
flies the
right?
ship.
Erica Ortegas. I fly the ship.
She's the
I
Travis
must be the pilot.
Mayweather, the Tom Paris, if you will, of this show. And as the hotshot pilot. I like it, but she's also kind of getting to maybe she can be more than just the hotshot pilot.
Yeah, and one detail I liked with this is she wanted to go down to the planet, and they're all wearing the traditional garb, and she's wearing the hat, and then they give her shit. Oh, you actually put on the hat, and then she's not going to bring it, and it turns out the hats was the secret to the whole thing, and I like that they set that up in the first act, that the hat would have saved your brain, dummy.
Yes, and the
great
reason
payoff.
that she can't go on the landing party is because they need someone to manually drive through this asteroid field while they're going, and she's the only one who can do it. So
She
kind
crushes
of a
it.
reoccurring thing where she never gets to go on landing parties because she always has to fly the ship. So yeah, you're right. It was a
That
great.
That was her best moment this episode for sure.
Yeah, it's a great Ortegas episode. And it's a
she's
great
lovely.
episode.
I watched the interviews on the Ready Room with Will Wheaton, and she's very charming and sweet. She seems to love playing the role. So
Sure.
yeah.
And I also like the conclusion of this episode where Pike has a heart-to-heart with this guy and is like, look, I fucked up. We fucked up. Like, we left you behind. That's my bad. But also you did like some bad shit and you have to come to terms with that because you chose to do that. So I thought it was another great Pike way to end the episode. They could have easily gone with like, this guy could have been an ego, maniacal, crazy person that is just evil, and you just have to kill him at the end. But it resolves peacefully in a way that he uses diplomacy and stuff. So I love that.
And Pike had plans with his girlfriend, Captain, I want to say Banana. What is her name?
Captain Banana. Captain Battelle. Marie Battelle.
Yeah.
Captain Battelle, thank you. Who gives him a gift, right? And it's something that he uses to focus on later to recover his memories. And later in this season, he says to her, you brought me back from a place I didn't think I could ever return from, what I didn't even know who I was. Like, he references this episode and his love for her. I think that's my favorite.
Really cool. He's so empathetic. He's got feelings and he's not afraid to show it.
Yeah. Yes. If you remember back to season 1, the way they kind of introduce this relationship between Pike and Battelle, it's kind of in media res, where it's like they're already gone through some shit in the past. We don't know exactly what it is. I think some of it ties over from Discovery. So maybe
they're kind of broken up. Yeah.
He's making pancakes the first time we see him.
He's in a cabin. He grew his beard out. He's leaving Starfleet.
Making our breakfast.
So it's a lot of history there, and we'll see more of Battelle later in the season as well.
And that's where we get a little bit of this is part episodic, part season-long storytelling, where we'll call back certain details from scenes, but you could also kind of watch these in a vacuum. But yeah, fun away mission planet episode, I think is the way to look at it before we go to
and 5. Now as we're going, like, truly, we're texting each other every week, I think, going like, this thing is fucking hitting its stride. These back-to-back rushing it. So let's keep rolling.
With this episode 5, and then we'll take a quick break and round out the last 5, but this is really because we finally get a Spock episode, and I think this is when we're like, wow, they have done it. We're halfway through, and I wish we were not that far in, is how I think I felt after this. But this one is Jacob.
Next episode is called Charades. Like you said, it's a Spock episode similar to the Spock episode we had in last season. Hijinks. Vulcan hijinks.
Vulcan hijinks,
Spock, I do not care for hijinks.
Exactly.
Spring, his fiance, his betrothed features in this one. And I gotta say, I did enjoy this one, but it's not one of my favorites from the season. It's good, but I don't think it's as good as last season's Spock episode where they switch places. It's a Freaky Friday situation. This one we have, if you remember,
there's some decent stuff here. Yeah, that's we get the Freaky Friday one.
I think it's the superior Spock episode, but this is a good too.
Well, say what it is.
Yeah. So in this one, Spock is basically the Vulcan DNA is removed from his body, so he's now 100% human. And so he's got to deal with that, right?
He's on an away mission with Chapel. They're kind of in this thing where she's got feelings for him, like, and where is this going? I'm betrothed, but they're trying to work together, be professional. They get near an anomaly. And when they come back out of it, they say he was fixed. The ship crashes or something. Like, we repaired him, and we looked at
these
your
higher
DNA.
beings.
It's like a non-corporeal thing.
Yeah, they have a different kind of plane of existence than we do. So they don't exactly understand our society. So they fix the ship, but they also fix what they think is an impurity within Spock, which is that he's half Vulcan, half human. So they make him like the other one, which is Chapel, the human. So they take out his Vulcan DNA, leaving him a human.
You do not come with an instruction manual.
Right.
Like, oh my God.
So as it
So
happens, this
Chapel
also
feels
happens
guilt
to
that
be
it's her fault because if she wasn't in the ship.
yeah.
But anyway, yeah.
And of
Yes.
course, this is a longer narrative of over the season of Chapel and Spock kind of having feelings for each other, while also there's complications of Spock, of course, being betrothed to T'Pring, Chapel wanting to focus on her career over a relationship potentially.
She might be going to college in a different state.
Yeah.
Yes. Character stuff just real quick, and then you can keep going. Spock at this point has also been dabbling with having human emotions, but by this episode has decided to totally suppress them and ignore Christine in an effort to truly commit to T'Pring.
Right. And it's like, yeah, you don't want to cheat on your betrothed. But they have this mutual attraction that they can't deny, which is, again, another interesting reference to TOS, of course, because the Chapel character in TOS, who's much more of a background character, but there's an ongoing joke where she flirts with Spock a lot and she is attracted to Spock. So kind of a reference to that older time period when
because
she wasn't seen very much.
Spock. Cuckold Gene Roddenberry just wanted to watch his wife fucking have sex with somebody.
Leonard Nimoy.
Yeah, with Leonard Nimoy dressed as Spock. Probably, yeah.
We don't know.
Yes, good. Yes.
In the 60s.
Look, here's the thing.
Yeah.
There is no TOS episode where this plot occurs. You guys have confirmed that to me, correct?
No, because they never go as far with Chapel and Spock other than flirtations, basically.
Sure. But I mean the human for a day plot.
No, Spock's never been made fully human before like this.
Guys.
And of course, this also, if I can say,
Peck.
the other part of the episode happens to be happening when his mother and his mother-in-law, T'Pring's mother, are coming on board for a special ritual of the betrothed.
Super Vulcan ritual that you really need to be a Vulcan to know how to do.
Yeah.
It's a big deal.
Yes, you have to fucking scar yourself.
We see his human mother, Spock's human mother, Amanda. Forget her last name.
Oh, that's right.
Amanda Gray? I was literally about to
Grayson,
ask you if that's her
what
name.
it is.
Grayson.
Like Dick Grayson. Of course, I
was gonna say it's like Jean Grey.
Yeah. Amanda Grayson, human mother of Spock, married Sarek. We see her in the TOS and the TOS movies. We see her played by Winona Ryder, of course, in the Kelvin movies.
Yes.
And now we see this universe's version, I guess.
Yes. And empathy, I guess, is the word we're just going to say this whole episode. This is him learning a lot of not hiding himself, not only embracing his Vulcan side, but his human side, seeing what his mother has gone through all these years to suppress her humanity, to raise up what he believes is his Vulcan heritage. But I just want to back up again a second.
Yeah.
The fact that this plot has never occurred, you're saying it's not in your top 5. I'm saying Charades, this episode, is in one of my top 5 of all Star Trek episodes, period. Because I love this idea so much. It is so well written. And it's a trope I like. Mike, I don't know if this does anything for you, but when my brother would watch Inuyasha, and he, a half demon, like a half demon dog, I believe, and then man or whatever, human, would have this whole year cycle where one day a year he would be fully demon, and one day a year he would be completely human. This idea that this, half and half person in society, who is obviously a metaphor for so much more stuff, as every one of those characters in all of, creative history is, having that day where it's like, I'm all this, how am I going to get treated? I'm all this type, I'm getting treated differently. Is just, it's just such a banger fucking premise. It's just fucking great. And to see it on Star Trek and to have Ethan Peck, let's shout out the actor of the episode. Let's say the guy playing Spock, who, if you listen along to our movie episodes, we have fully committed to just sucking this guy's dick and saying like, he is like, he crushes it on Star Trek. He crushes it.
Yeah, he's better than Zachary Quinto. I think we all agree on that.
Yeah, it's incredible.
My only
and now
problem
he's going
with
into
this
territory Nimoy never went into. So
yeah, but I think it is a good premise. At the same time, I think they've done plenty of examinations of Spock trying to come to terms with both his Vulcan and human side, and coming to terms as living with half and half, and how do you navigate that. But this is, of course, taking it further than any other kind of plot like this has taken it, in that he's becoming fully human and having to experience what it's like to be human for the first time.
Yeah, we get him eating bacon and smelling basil and stuff. But I think if it wasn't for the
He
actor,
puts your apron on, Mike. Yes, go ahead.
Ethan Peck, this is a Spock apron too now. Absolutely. And in season 1, they didn't have these clips that you'd see in the video, but in season 2 they do. So this is a season 2 apron, So I'm just saying.
Incredible.
But without this cast, because Kate Bush also is Nurse Chapel, is really strong in these scenes where she has to sneak into the bathroom and be like, I think I made an answer, because she's trying to make like a temporary cure to like, yo, I want you to succeed in this thing that I fucked up for you.
Hijinks.
I'm sorry. Yeah, hijinks. So there's all that
Jess
going
Bush,
on.
I think.
Jess Bush,
Not
sorry.
Kate
I
Bush.
said
But she
Kate Bush.
also-
I'm
but-
running up that hill.
Yeah.
She is running up that hill. But
Yes,
Christine, Mike, just real quick to give her further action of this, the results of what's happening to Spock, him being able to express emotions for the first time, going to Christina and being like, I was avoiding looking at you the other day. That's so weird. Hugging her, being physical. And her seeing like she makes a very interesting choice in this episode, and I think this is very well written. And I saw an interview with the woman who directed the episode. I can't recall her name to shout her out, but she intentionally made this choice too, and I think it's great. She is falling in love with the emotional version of Spock, but a good love story, I mean, that's not a good payoff if she's just kissing, the man. She needs to kiss the frog too. It's like we've seen her flirting with the logical Spock. So the fact that she shoots him up, he changes back, he calls off the thing, and then the kiss at the episode occurs when he is himself, not under some sort of phony love potion or, alien hijinks, all this stuff. That is a payoff. That is a huge, swinging, gushing romantic moment that is just, I mean, it's in Star Trek, and I'm watching it going like, yes, my two favorite characters are kissing. This is shipping, I guess. I'm into shipping now.
Yeah,
But you shouldn't be shipping them because Spock has to be with
No,
T'Pring.
I have to.
Well,
That's
he actually
not
doesn't,
going to happen,
just up to a certain
Jacob.
point. But I do want to say too, like to your point, Colin. And it's Jordan Canning is the director of this. Great job.
Amazing.
This kind of results in, after the ceremony, Spock tells his mom what's going on, and he tells the captain. He's able to get through it, but even after they get through the ceremony and the parents approve, and he tells T'Pring, look, I was human this whole time and it was fucking difficult, but we did it. She's like, I'm kind of upset that you thought you couldn't come to me with that, and I think we should take a break and think about this betrothal.
Yes.
And it's at that moment that Spock shows up and he gives the speech. He's like, I want to feel this. These feelings I have for you, I want to feel them. I want to explore this as a half Vulcan, half human. And that's when, we get the smooch. And I think that is effective.
Also, you're one of the hottest women who's ever been on TV.
Right.
So, like, I have to do this is basically what
break me in half. Klingon
Still,
style.
destroy me.
I'm a T'Pring Spock
nurse, she
shipper,
can fix
I
you.
guess.
How dare you?
I still think the season 1 Spock episode was stronger, the Freaky Friday.
To each their
but
own, but that
to
is
each their
kinda,
own, yeah.
We're getting Vulcan hijinks with some emotional stuff here, and I did enjoy it, but I think the cast elevates the material.
Yes,
to
and
a
I did
degree.
love the, of course, the Vulcan parents, the mom, T'Pring's mom, of course, being the mother-in-law from hell, essentially, and also the mother from hell, like the way she raised T'Pring, she was very harsh and
You have to do a whole
criticizing her a lot.
Emotionally manipulative.
Yeah,
Well, you have in the ceremony a whole thing where you have to say what's wrong with you, what you need to do better. Like that's part of it. It's like,
but you can kind of tell, like the way that she raised T'Pring, she was just very passive aggressively. Like T'Pring basically couldn't do anything right in her eyes, which is, of course, a bad way to parent.
Right.
And it kind of shows Vulcans, they're not perfect, and there's a lot of really good Trek episodes that kind of delve into Vulcan culture and how they put on this air like they're so much better than everyone. They only follow logic, but you see the ways in which passive aggressively they're not perfect. They have their own problems just like any other race, like humans or like Klingons or anyone else. Vulcan society isn't perfect. There's a lot wrong with it. I would even compare it to something like modern day Japan, where politeness kind of supersedes real emotion and that kind of thing. So
there's
I
like
like
a prideful, like there's this kind of energy that's like they
Yeah.
have their own conflict through logic. That's like it's kind of
And again,
prideful
that's
folly.
also something that Enterprise covers very well, where Archer kind of doesn't like the Vulcans because they're so snobbish and pretentious and essentially think of humans
Stoic.
as lesser than them.
Right.
But they do it in such a polite, passive-aggressive way that you can never really call them on that. You just kind of have to accept their little quips and barbs and stuff.
Digs
So
at you.
I love examining Vulcan culture. I think they're such an interesting race in Star Trek and the world building around them. Probably my favorite alien race of all of Star Trek. So
Wow.
Wow. And now we know how to do the tea ceremony.
that's right.
Yes.
So we're learning a lot of
do you
culture.
think you guys could grab that scalding hot thing?
Never.
No, I would not.
No.
I'm
just not strong
very
enough
bad
to
with
lift
hot.
it in general, I don't think.
No.
I'd be like, ow, my hands burn.
I have friends who
It
just grab
hurts.
like shit off the stove with like their bare hands. I'm like, how do you? I'm so scared. Anyway,
Yeah, that's
but it is
crazy.
great to get more Vulcan culture. Oh, hello, it's like Spot. I just had a cat appearance on YouTube.
Sorry, I just had a no. That was a triple, Mike.
Oh, that's right. Right, careful. Don't
Feed them. Don't feed them
don't
after
feed it.
midnight.
I was going to say don't get it wet. But yeah, some of that Vulcan stuff, if we didn't explore it, it would get lost in translation, which is the name of episode 6 that we're going to dive into right after this.
Ooh, we're back. We've been boldly going and exploring some strange new worlds here with season 2 on Normies Like Us.
That's right.
Let's keep going. Let's talk episode 6, season 2.
Episode 6. We're halfway through. This one, Lost in Translation, directed by Sofia Coppola. Just kidding, but
What?
I'm referencing the movie Lost in Translation.
Speaking of Japan earlier, just to throw it back.
But
Yes.
Jacob, didn't you tell us on pod or off pod? Didn't somebody from the original Blair Witch direct an episode of Strange New Worlds this season? Have we hit one of those
Did I
yet?
tell you that? I don't think I
I
didn't
think
know
maybe
that.
is that a fact? Oh, maybe that's
I don't
a
know
fact I'm making up. In fact,
Fair enough.
Not
fair
something
enough.
I was aware of, but
But
yeah,
yeah,
Lost in
we won't play
Translation. Now this is a Uhura focused episode. This is
Right.
This is a classic trope of someone on board is experiencing weird symptoms, hallucinations. Something's wrong with them. They go to sick bay. They can't figure out what's wrong. Blah blah blah. Been done many times.
Ada,
in
why
many
did you
different
put
Star
that
Treks.
mask on? What are you doing? Why did you do that?
Right.
yeah.
I like this episode. I do
O'Brien,
think
you
it's
were
a,
never gone. What?
it's a-
I wasn't.
This episode is again, I think, one of the weaker ones of the season. Not to say it's bad or anything, but just not my favorite. But it is an Uhura focused episode. I like Uhura as a character. I like this actress. Yeah.
Yes, Nayota's the greatest. It's the return of Hemmer, which is interesting. I think maybe the weakness of it's the second episode literally in a row, the last one, the Spock one, where we're dealing with fifth or fourth dimensional aliens that are like beyond our comprehension, that are like, we're doing a thing and we messed up a thing, and you're like,
Right.
okay, well,
We
we,
do get
can't see, or
3
we
of
don't really know
those
what's
at
going
least.
on. So
Huh.
it's not great.
Yeah, here we have Uhura experiencing these hallucinations, trying to figure out what's going on. She's seeing dead people from her past, including her parents and Hemmer, who she was getting very close with in season 1.
Up until
Eventually
those
it's
damn corn.
Of course, this is also when Enterprise is near a deuterium field in space, I guess, and they're making this refinery, right? A deuterium refinery. Deuterium is the mineral that is used to make basically warp engine fuel. Is
it's
the
oil.
normie way to explain it? Yeah, or gas. Yeah.
We struck oil out in here and we gotta
Yeah,
refine
we're gonna
it.
putting a pump
Yeehaw.
out here.
So this deuterium, by building this gas station in space, essentially they're making it easier to travel. And this is kind of far on the edge of Federation space. So it's kind of like a pit stop before you go into sort of unexplored space, right? Is the way it's kind of described. So by having this station here, they're opening up more lanes into further space that they can explore. So it's a very strategically important location. But as it turns out, there is this alien race living in the deuterium that they're essentially killing by refining this deuterium into fuel. And so these aliens are trying to communicate with us through these hallucinations that Uhura is experiencing and saying, stop, you're killing us, stop, basically. So it's kind of a dark premise too, where they're just killing these people without knowing them. But what did you guys think of this episode?
Yeah, Colin.
It was fine. Until you said that thing about Nyota's parents, I could not remember that Uhura's parents were dead. What did she say in the
Yes.
episode? What did she
She-
reveal? I cannot even recall.
Well, this was revealed in season 1, but she also has a tragic backstory where her family died. I forget how, but she was basically
can't
raised by
remember.
her grandmother. Yeah, I would have to look that up because I don't remember. But
Sure.
yeah,
But
they're
that's
dead.
kind
Dead
of how I
parents.
feel about this episode in general. It's
Yeah.
just I cannot remember. I don't know.
It's one of the
Not
weaker
one
ones.
of the best.
No,
It's a Star Trek episode. I mean, it feels like some TNG. We get the moral, like they can only communicate through her brain waves or some, that's why it's
Yeah.
showing up as people she knows and these
Yeah.
emotions of
right.
death, like
She's
you're
seeing
killing us.
zombie Hemmer, basically.
Yeah. But she figures out that's a language, and it's like, you got to trust me. There's something living in here. So the end, it's like, well, we can't build our gas station here. I guess we'll leave them alone. Star Trek stuff.
And I will say,
It's fine.
yeah, it's reminiscent of other episodes in the season because I was confusing the Ortegas scene from Among the Lotus Eaters with being in this episode for some reason because they're both dealing with
Mm.
A brain
mind, like
radiation
amnesia.
thing.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And then
Mhm.
also,
That's fair.
this is this first of 2 more Uhura focused episodes in like almost a row, with the Subspace Rhapsody episode being
I told you that's a sneak attack. That's
but they're both
they pull that
her
off.
her job
Yes.
as a communications officer, knowing languages,
Yes.
learning to communicate in different ways. They're kind of both dealing with that.
Mm-hmm. And she's
So
always
it's-
figuring out what's her
it's
place
tapping-
on the ship.
Yeah. So maybe the weakest
Tapping
episode
the
of the
fancy
season, I think.
AirPod Mike likes.
Right.
Yeah.
Love
that's
it.
right.
Love
I
it.
love that thing.
So
yeah,
next
that's,
episode, right?
Yeah, exactly. I think this is one of the ones we were most looking forward to.
Absolutely. So this is Those Old Scientists, directed by Jonathan Frakes himself. Number 1.
Riker.
Just a real quick setup. Comic-Con, they have a big panel. They're like Strange New Worlds, because obviously Paramount Plus comes. This episode's not supposed to be out yet. They reveal, they say like, we're gonna screen it for everybody. But even better, we are releasing it the second this panel is done. So we all got to watch this like a week early, if you guys recall.
Yeah,
Oh,
pushed
wow.
up the
Please
finale
continue.
and everything.
That's right. Yeah. So we had 2 episodes in a week, which was good because the last one, again, was not the strongest of the season. But then this one comes in, and this is, of course, the Lower Decks Strange New Worlds crossover that was announced pre this season even coming out. And I think everyone was looking forward to it. And of course, Lower Decks is an animated show. So we're like, oh, how are they going to do that? And of course, what they do by that is having Jack Quaid and Tawny Newsome, who play Boimler and Mariner, respectively, on Lower Decks, acting as their characters in live action. And it works really well because they both look a lot like their animated character.
Yeah.
Yes, they do.
And so, let's get into this episode because I thought it was fucking great. This may be my favorite episode of the season. Yeah.
Colin, you're always
Yes,
advocate for this, so yeah.
Jacob said tomorrow. That's kind of where I'm at too.
That's
where I'm
up
like,
there
that's
too,
so
yeah.
good. But I guess Those Old Scientists goes above it because, guys, yes, Mike, this is my favorite Trek meeting my favorite live action Trek, I guess.
Yeah.
Right.
Lower
You love Lower
Decks,
Decks.
It's the greatest. I told you guys I ordered a Strange New World shirt that is animated by the company that does Lower Decks animation, Titmouse. And there's just a really cool shirt on their website right now that has the whole cast at the end as we get them fully animated. But to start this thing off, where the prologue, because of course Star Trek 5-act episodes, prologue, epilogue. The prologue is animated. Beyond that, we get animated credits of the Strange New World credits as well.
Right.
And even that fucking knocks it out of the park.
Animated in the style of the Lower Decks credits, which I think
Yes.
are also really well done. So we start. It's essentially a Lower Decks episode to start, where we see all our favorite characters, including the other 2 friends, Eugene
Fendi.
Cordero and
I think it's
Tendi.
the most. Yeah, Tendy's the most important one. I have
Yeah.
a cat named Fendi. My bad. Tendi.
Tendi, yeah, who is an Orion and one of the only Orions in Starfleet, which is
And a lot of people are prejudiced and they think Orions are only pirates, and that's not
Right.
true. And it's
They
narrow-minded.
just mostly
Don't think
are.
like that.
Yeah.
We just mostly are.
And of course, we had the Big Show playing a Orion in Enterprise, so that's always fun.
Oh,
I love it.
Yeah, he's
so
an Orion
big.
slave trader.
And we got those great Orions in the Mutiny
Oh.
episode last season 2.
So they are always
Right.
pirates. Interesting.
Traditionally, they're.
Yeah.
I mean, but as it progresses,
We're gonna play with that in this episode.
Yeah. But they find this portal on this random planet, and some hijinks ensue. Boimler ends up going through the portal, and he is portaled back to about 150 years because Lower Decks takes place post Voyager.
Mhm.
And they go back to those old scientists time, right? Which is TOS, of course.
Scientists.
A very funny reference to how this time is called the TOS.
Why do you call it that? Well, Ransom calls it that. I don't know.
Yeah.
Yes. And of course, these are historical figures in Starfleet history. Pike, Captain Pike, Una, all these different peoples go on to do many famous things in history. And Boimler being a huge Starfleet history nerd, because that is his character basically on Lower Decks. He knows everything about them basically, and this is like his dream come true, getting to meet his heroes.
He's the perfect character to experience this. Now it's Jack Quaid, as you said, and Jacob, as you said as well. Jonathan Frakes directs this episode. So a great interview with him, number one himself, where he said, "Hey, I was on TNG. They treated it like fucking Shakespeare. You said every word that was written."
Right.
Now, this episode, heavily comedic. They right away say like, we're not even going to like pretend that this is an episode where you have to walk around and be like, I'm, your aunt from this thing. I'm not, from the future. Like, no. Everybody admits to that immediately. We're just going to have fun with this. And because of their background, Tawny and Jack specifically, improv heavy. Jonathan Frakes said, we've never seen anything like it on Star Trek. We're having fun. We're cracking jokes, a lot of unscripted stuff. Mike, what did you think about this? I know you love Jack Quaid.
Yeah, I'm a big Jack Quaid fan. The boys, we're fans of that. And
he screamed. Remember when he screamed?
Yeah. It's for 3 seconds.
It's the classic Boimler scream. Yeah, I'm a bigger fan of his uncle, but I like
fair
Jack
enough.
Quaid.
No, but I was excited.
Not his dad. Not his mom.
No,
his uncle.
Randy Quaid,
Right.
baby.
Heck yeah, Independence Day.
ID4.
Yeah. Those 4 scientists. I was looking forward to this because Colin, you got me to finally watch Lower Decks, and I agree, it's super, super good. And Mariner and Boimler, their chemistry is very charming. The rest of the crew is great. So getting to see them in live action, I was wondering how it would translate, and I think it translates really well. And they just own up to it. We're from the future, and they're like, okay, you can't say anything about the future to us. And the comedy between, oh man, Worf's honor, like, oh, shit, what's that? Nothing. Never mind. Yeah,
he's nobody.
It's fun.
And what I like is, Lower Decks has this sort of more exaggerated comedic style, of course, as an animated, more comedic Trek show. And I think Jack Quaid and Tawny Newsome really keep that energy here. And so it's essentially like 2 Lower Decks characters coming into this Strange New Worlds universe where the tone is very different, but they're still being themselves, and the whole crew is just having to react to these 2 insane people that they've met.
It's almost well, like in the future, 150 years in the future after Voyager and stuff, it's like it's so mundane too. Like this is early days of human space exploration, so like you can have goofballs in space, but here it's like we need only like the best of the best. But in the future, it's like you kind of just have a job out there.
And keep in mind, in Lower Decks, the ship that they follow in Lower Decks is like the second, it's like the second level of
contact.
ship. So like Enterprise goes to make first contact, they come back for second contact, which
drop
is much
off
less
supplies
important.
And shit.
Yeah. So they're kind of like the janitors of Starfleet, going around doing the work that no one wants to do.
And now they're on the flagship of the historical
top,
ships. It's incredible.
Yeah, and of course Mariner, there's a whole storyline where she could be doing more important things, so she's really good at her job, but just doesn't care and likes to goof off and stuff. So that's why she's on this ship that's captained by her mom, blah, blah, blah. Anyways, they show up in Strange New Worlds. Pike and the rest are having to react more of this as like the straight men to these wacky hijinks characters, and I just love it so much because, yeah, it's just Boimler being a nerd and being like, oh, and you're freaking
You're a Hura.
Yeah.
Yeah. And she's just like an ensign.
More-
She's like, what do you mean?
More very strong writing for me because I feel like this is another show that sort of in the way you were talking about Orville, Jacob, where it Trojan horsed in, where it's like, yes, we will make a Rick and Morty Star Wars.
Mm-hmm.
And then that
Star
kind of
Trek.
isn't what it is. Thank you, Jesus Christ.
That's
Star
both
Trek.
of you. That's
A
one
Rick
for
and
both
Morty
of you.
Star. Yeah,
That's right.
Mike, if you break it, we summon Beetlejuice. And instead it's like what that show is, it's not like irreverent and goofy and stuff. It's a very meta show about Star Trek. It's sort of the premise of Lower Decks is like, how can we pay homage, love, and crack jokes at the entire Star Trek universe? And I don't know, bringing that over here, it's like you're saying, yes, they're capturing it so well, but to take the plot of the episode to be like, it's the ultimate nostalgia bait. We're going to cross over a guy who loves Star Trek from a show about kind of laughing about Star Trek to a Star Trek everybody loves. But the plot by the end of it really is like nostalgia silly. Like you guys would be as excited to meet the Enterprise crew. And they're all like, yeah, Captain
Yeah. Oh,
Archer
Captain
would be. Yeah,
Archer?
like, and they're like,
Travis
oh, we sound
Mayweather,
like
the
this
pilot?
idiot, don't we? Yeah, exactly. You know, and like the way that it's like, it's kind of like, and this sucks to reference, to shout out what I think is a good Woody Allen movie. But if you've ever seen Midnight in Paris, Owen Wilson has this incredible speech where he's like, or the revelation of the film where he's like, every time period he travels back to, those artists are like, we're not the real artists. The real artists were the guys 10 years ago. You know, it's
Right.
that grass is always greener, or you're never part of the big thing.
Mm-hmm.
And I just think it's like a really cool premise for them to sort of like shout that out and be like, no, it's just kind of dumb to think about any of this. Go do your thing and just be really good at it. And instead you have Boimler and like Mariner like staying true to who they are, solving a crisis, and then going back to their goofy little world. So perfect.
And I think the strength of Lower Decks really is that, like you said, it starts out as it's Rick and Morty Star Trek. But you get to know these characters, and especially like Mariner has such an interesting backstory that's developed over time in the show. And like Boimler, like all these characters, they have more to them than you first think. And I just like how they really kept that going in this episode. And then of course you have, you know, the Una, like, oh, he had a poster of you in his locker and stuff. Like that's all great. So there's just a lot to like here. And again, if you're a fan of like Trek referencing other Trek, as it tends to do a lot, like this is the episode for you, because it's a lot of that, but it's really fun.
This is the trouble with Tribbles. Like this is our big crossover. It's just in good fun. It's just in good fun. Don't rack your brain. But there are some good emotional moments too. We get Boimler slipping the wrong line to Chapel, and then that gets her upset, and that leads to her crushing her relationship with Spock going forward. So there's some story beats happening too. We learn that Mariner like picked the mission because she knew Boimler would want to see the portal, but she's pretending like she doesn't care. That kind of stuff is all great.
Yeah.
So a lot of fun with TOS.
Yes.
Yeah, with Boimler, you know, with Spock, this is ongoing the Spock Chapel arc where it's like, will they, won't they? Will they, won't they? And
Spock
Boimler's
is using
like,
his human emotions now, right? And Boimler's like, that's not the guy I read about. And that's like his hero is Spock.
Right. And essentially Boimler's like, oh, I know that Spock will not end up with Nurse Chapel because that would have been something I knew from history. But he can't expressly say that because that would again be breaking the temporal prime directive. So he's kind of got to hint at it without revealing anything too much.
It's even on accident. He's like, Spock, this isn't how Spock normally behaves, like in from what I've read. And then Chapel internalizes that as I'm why he's behaving weird, and that seems like it's off of the prime timeline. But yeah, so it's not just
also
goofy,
Tawny calls him
yeah, what?
Sorry, Tawny calls him Hot Spock 3 times. She's like, Hot Spock.
Hot Spock.
Oh yeah, that's right.
Yeah, I love when the crew is like, do their references seem really specific to you? Because they're just referencing things that happened in other Star Trek shows.
nonstop.
Boimler is us.
Yeah.
He's the fan insert. Like, we love
Absolutely.
it all.
And that's what he is in
And
Lower
this-
Decks, where he's just like a nerd of Starfleet who joined
Mhm.
Starfleet and is just obsessed with every aspect of it.
And this is it. I mean, you couldn't get another episode like this, right?
No
They could
way.
always,
So-
in the future, have some way to bring them back just to maybe do something else with the story, but it might not be as good a second
We have time police. You could figure it out, but I would prefer this be a one and done. DS9
Yeah.
didn't go back to TOS ever after that, but I think this is
No.
a great, delightful episode, and it's a nice, light-hearted episode because the next episode we're going to get is a lot heavier, and maybe my favorite episode of the season, and that's episode 8 here.
Okay, yeah, episode 8, we have Under the Cloak of War.
Mm-hmm.
Ooh,
And yeah, we're
even that
again,
title.
Yeah,
Return of the
very
Klingon.
DS9.
Like, this
and of
is
course-
most DS9.
Yes, and this is dealing again with the Klingon War, which is sort of a recent conflict in history. And we have this Klingon ambassador character who was apparently this general in the war who did a lot of bad stuff, but then surrendered to the Federation and was made an ambassador because he agreed to cooperate with them, right? But of course, Dr. Mbenga knows him from his time in the war and knows that he's actually a bad guy, and so he's got to deal with that. And this is a great Mbenga episode,
Mhm.
and of course Chapel as well. So what do you guys think?
Yeah.
Yes.
Well, since this is probably my favorite, like I texted you guys even before I finished it without details. Like, this episode is going for an Emmy. Like, the writing, the acting, it's very dark, very heavy, but I love it. I love the kind of Mbenga and the ambassador were on opposite sides of the same battle, and he's a medic, so he's dealing with triage and trying to keep the soldiers alive as a result of his butchery. And then now he's an ambassador, so how do I manage my emotions? Same thing with Chapel. They have the shared trauma of being at that
Yeah.
battle. Very well done. Nuance. Incoming transport. You kidding me? That's like the scariest 2 words now.
Yeah, and we see flashbacks to the Klingon War, and again, very DS9 heavy vibes. Where in season 6 of DS9, you had the Dominion War. One particular episode where Nog goes to the front line of the war and sees a lot of like fucked up shit and like loses his leg
Yeah.
in a battle and has to deal with PTSD after that, and it's like crazy stuff. And so this episode reminded me a lot of that episode. and
Yeah,
that
this is the
whole
darkest
season.
it's been. Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah, and we learned a lot about why Mbenga was able to fight the Klingons in the first episode. He's made the serum that was now made illegal, and he gets these spec ops guys who are like, come on, you got the stuff, we got to beat these Klingons. He's like, I don't have any more. Secretly
Right.
he does, and when he's at his breaking point, boy, does
against,
he
like,
break.
It's against
Time
the
for martial
Geneva
arts.
Convention of space, basically.
Right.
That's right.
And another DS9, not to bring it up again, but there's a season 1 episode where Major Kira has to. There's a Cardassian former general now, sort of peace activist for the Cardassians that comes to the station, and she's got to like deal with that. It's called Duet, I believe.
Yeah.
And
Oh.
it's a very strong episode of DS9 as well.
There's also some moral stuff like Pale Moonlight. You know, it's a great DS9 episode.
Pale
Obviously
Moonlight,
one
exactly.
of the best.
Yeah.
And yeah, you learn that there's like Mbenga had to do immoral things he felt because he had no choice. And there's a guy, the butcher of whatever the battle is. We think it's the general, but it was actually Mbenga who killed all the general's underlings, and the general escaped. And as a coward, he's been assuming the name the butcher for clout or whatever, but actually he
Yes.
ran away. And so there's this whole thing going on, and they have a conflict at the end, and they don't really give you a clear answer to what happened. And it's just there's a lot of
Well,
heavy.
and it
heavy
ends
stuff.
with Mbenga kills the ambassador, right? He has
We
a-
don't know who started the fight, but the ambassador is dead.
No.
Yeah.
But he has this conflict inside of him where he's like he thinks it's right that he should kill the ambassador, but also obviously it's against the law, and if he was found out, he would get kicked out of Starfleet. Obviously, he would be probably in jail. So he's got to like deal with that.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Have you seen with Chris where it's like,
So
I don't know who started the fight, but I'm not sad that he's dead. That's basically what he says.
Yeah.
Dr. Joseph Mbenga, who you guys had to tell me is also a character from the original series. I was not aware of that.
Mhm.
But
Yeah.
shout out to Babs Olusanmokun, I believe, who, you know, in that first season had that through line of my daughter is in the buffer zone. I'm kind of sad. I got to find this thing. They
Right.
resolved that much quicker than I ever thought they would. And then it was like, okay, who is this guy? And he was kind of always only just a peg over Ortegas for me, where it was like, I don't dislike them. Again, I just don't really know them that well. And now, I mean, one, Ortega is all the way up here. And two, Mbenga, I love as well. He's just a cool guy with an even more developed, interesting background. You really understand his and Christine's dynamic about like why they are so dependent on each other. Shout out to Clint Howard, who's in this episode. And I believe I told you guys off pod was like in an original episode of Star Trek as like
he's been in
8-year-old or something like that.
According to trivia, he's been in every series, right? Is that what we determined?
Oh, wow.
Like
oh, I didn't know that.
know if
That's
every-
cool.
Or the most series.
Yeah, he's been in a
Might
lot.
not be in
I mean,
everybody. He's been in the
Other
most.
than
I'm sure,
Jeffrey
'cause
Combs
who else
and
alive would be
Tony Todd.
Yeah.
But
Yeah, they weren't in TOS. Yeah, no way.
No,
James
Walter
Cromwell has
Koenig.
been.
I mean, yes.
Yeah.
But I'm still alive, people? No, come on.
There's there's an Enterprise episode where four Ferengi invade the Enterprise, and this is years before Starfleet or the Federation discovered the Ferengi. So there's this unknown alien species to the crew of the Enterprise. But one of them is played by Clint Howard. One of them is played by
Perfect Ferengi.
the guy that plays. Now I'm blanking on the name.
I can't remember the.
The Quark's original actor?
Neelix in Voyager.
Oh, the Neelix actor is in Ferengi. Yeah.
Is one of them, and one of them is I don't know. They're all sorry. I should have looked it up before I started this story, but they're four cameos from other Star Trek. Oh, one of them is Jeffrey Combs, of course.
Right.
There we go.
So, anyways, the point is, Clint Howard has been in other roles in Star Trek.
It's incredible.
Another Star Trek trope.
I love it.
But yeah.
And
my name's Buck. Okay.
yeah, and we also see again the pattern buffer thing here in the season 1.
This is where he gets the idea to hide his daughter because they hide somebody's pattern in the buffer
so someone
to keep
they
him
can't.
alive.
Yeah, they can't get to him right. He needs immediate surgery basically to live. They can't get to him because they have to do all these other patients, so they stick him in the buffer. Eventually they have to delete his pattern because they have more people coming in, so they have to sacrifice this person to potentially save many other people.
And Christine can't push the button, and Benga does, and she says, "What did we do?" And he says, "We saved lives." So incredible episode about the difficult choices you have to make.
The needs of the many.
The needs of the few or one. So classic stuff, heavy stuff, the heaviest episode this season. But
great
I
episode,
like this one a lot.
And a strong guest actor of the Klingon ambassador, who is a guy that was in The Wire. And as I said to you guys off pod, like anytime a supporting actor from The Wire pops up in anything, I love it because it has a very solid cast. So next episode,
the dinner scene to rival General Chang's in the movie. Like there's a great tension at that dinner scene where they show up to support the captain. But as we said, moving on, two to go.
Also, real quick, shout out to Lance Reddick, the best of them, who was a guest star from The Wire, who loved Star Trek and never got to do it. So fucking
was he
one of
never
the
in
best. One of the best.
Lance Reddick and Michael K. Williams, two of my favorite actors in The Wire, both died recently. So R.I.P. to them.
Come on.
Rest in peace.
But on a lighter note, we have episode 9, Subspace Rhapsody. The
fabled musical. We heard about it. There was whispers of it coming.
The once more with feeling. This is a trope, of course, that's been done not just in Trek or not in Trek before, but in many other shows such as Buffy, most famously Scrubs is one I can think of.
Yep.
Sure.
I'm sure there are others.
Oh, I hope they do a puppet episode, Jacob, of Star Trek.
Oh, we're in the puppet anomaly.
The puppet sphere's open. Now, I watched, I have been keeping my beloved Pluto TV on, which of course has Star Trek channels as it's a Paramount affiliate. And they've been marathoning the original episodes. Mirror, the original Mirror Universe episode was on the other day, and it involves Uhura singing a song. I was like, there's fucking been musicals in Star Trek before.
And Uhura's been established to sing. So
maybe not a full musical episode, but this is essentially some weird, wacky space anomaly happens, and everyone starts communicating in musical numbers, and not just
Out
not
of
just
the
song, but like
thousands of
Broadway musical.
universes, some of them
Mhm.
take place in musicals, so that's why it's
Yeah.
happening here. So okay,
Well,
see you guys later.
Well, what
Yep.
happens actually is Uhura is trying to communicate. They end up uploading the works of Gilbert and Sullivan or something, right? I forget what it is exactly,
Gilbert
but
and
that's
Sullivan's
why
what
it's
Uhura likes, but yeah.
that's why it's
Yes.
trained on the modern American musical. So that's how it's essentially communicating. And essentially, every time anyone in the crew has an emotional response in some way, they start communicating their emotions in song without the ability to control it. And this, of course, is a huge security factor in Starfleet.
Yes.
So,
Brought up by La'an. Now, there's been kind of mixed feelings about this, even between us. All of us, I think, are either kind of like it was good or it was okay.
Mhm.
I lean towards the good side, the higher side of the spectrum, because I think if this episode highlights what the rest of the season does well too, it's the fact that I believe everything that everybody does in this episode. When La'an is having her character moments in this and how she's acting, I believe that is the same La'an, that she's written the exact same level, that she still has like the integrity of the character that the writing is providing, that Christine does in the rest of the stuff, and having her sort of romantic triangle this whole episode
Mhm.
or this whole season. It's not like I even need payoff to any of that. I just think there's great consistency with how they're acting, even when they're fucking singing. That's incredible.
I will say, it's a fun one-off idea, but also they still act true to their characters, and it's an interesting story, not just a musical episode, but there's an actually interesting narrative things happening, and essentially it's a vehicle to wrap up some of these relationship threads that have developed this season. Like you said, Chapel and Spock, La'an and Kirk, Pike and Battelle are all having some kind of relationship or communication
And
problems.
Chris, yeah. Sorry, you said that. Pike and
Yeah.
Battelle. Sorry.
And of course, Uhura also trying to find her place in the crew. And this is a big Uhura episode, as it turns out.
Yeah.
And Celia Rose Gooding, a Broadway starring actress, incredible voice, and I think everyone's doing their best here. I think clearly Uhura and La'an are the standouts in terms of
La'an's a singer.
singing.
Christina Chong sings in real life.
She makes music. Like I said, Celia Rose Gooding was on Broadway.
You
Broadway.
said Jagged Little Pill, the musical.
Yes,
you
that's
said
right.
She was the
Alanis
which
Morissette
shocks me.
musical,
Wow.
Jagged Little Pill, which I didn't think was a thing, but it was also written by Diablo Cody, writer of Juno and
Isn't
other
that
movies.
ironic?
That's right.
Yes. So
It's like rain on your wedding day.
That's right. It's so ironic.
I think this episode's iconic more than it is ironic,
That's right. There we go.
I liked it a lot. I mean, I'm not a huge fan of musicals, but I am probably more than an average person. I like good musicals. Like I like having the, going from a very, very serious Klingon War episode to now the cast just having fun singing musicals. Like that just shows you the variety of different tones that this show can do and do well.
Yeah. It covers the entire spectrum of Trek and tone, and I saw a lot of old heads. Like I'm in Star Trek forums and stuff, just curiously, and a lot of the old heads are like, "I'm not watching a musical episode of Star Trek. That's dumb." I'm like, "You're dumb." Like, Strange New Worlds isn't Star Trek's too much canon continuity breaks. I'm like, stop caring about that because the show is delightful. So some people
I think they go out of their way to fit canon as much as they can.
And
so people who care more about canon than good story, I just don't understand what you want in a Star Trek show, because narrative should always trump world building or canon lore. Like narrative is always more important. So yeah,
and
I like this episode.
Getting that payoff. Like they've been teasing. We've had a couple visits from our Kirk. Like La'an has reached out to him to do a security check just to talk to him, and she has in disguise it as, "Hey, I just had a weird inconsistency," and then he comes on the ship and they interact more, and she has to kind of hide this thing that she's been through because the time police said hide it. And when she sings her song, it's very heartfelt. And then, we learn that he's got a kid on the way and he can't be with her, and he appreciates what she's been through and stuff like that.
He's like, "I know this lady named Carol Marcus. we have an on again, off again relationship, but right now we're on again, and she's pregnant. Which is crazy that they're acknowledging all of this.
The future, dog.
Yeah.
Take me to the
Right.
future where everybody is so relaxed. He's like, sometimes I date this girl. Right now I am because she's pregnant. I fucked a baby into her.
Yeah, so we're on. But yeah, we wrap all this up. Chapel decides to go on the science excursion, and she's going to go join the science academy, and so all this stuff kind of comes to a head here.
Essentially, the wrap up of every one of these relationship arcs is, oh, we shouldn't do this. It's not a good idea, and it's mostly focusing on career over relationship. Where Chapel says this opportunity is really important. I'm going to pick that over this potential relationship with Spock. And Kirk wanting to be dutiful to Carol and also his job. So like I think that's a really interesting message of like these people in Starfleet, like to them like furthering their career in Starfleet is more important right now than a romantic relationship would be.
Yeah, like Picard has that later down the line too. But yeah, and we all have to sing together to solve the problem. Basically, you have to just fly backwards and sing, and you'll close the anomaly. Some space BS.
Boy. No, Mike, when it's literally said like, if everybody in Starfleet, we all have to have
our
a
grand
big
finale.
It's a
Oh, we get a
showstopper.
K-pop
Yeah,
thing with the Klingons. Klingon pop.
Now we get the return of Hemmer, who plays that lead Klingon, and we tease it. We see the Klingons again. The joke that they are K-pop, that they are doing this ridiculous different style that's happening to them, and basically Starfleet's like, turn it off, we've got our own thing to deal with. It's very funny.
Yeah, the Klingons
and
are
I
being
also
dishonored.
like that. They're like this dishonorable thing because Klingons already sing like sea shanties essentially on their ships and stuff as established in TNG. But for them to sing this K-pop type song, they would see that as dishonorable because it's not what Klingon music usually is.
It just flew over my head that it was Klingon pop and that was the K-pop joke, and I was like, "Oh my god!"
Sure,
it was right in front of us.
I didn't even realize that until just now.
Right now,
it's so good.
I too am stupid. Yeah.
Yes, and I thought the explanation for why this is happening, it's done in a way that makes a lot of sense in Star Trek. You just throw some jargon at it, but and I loved Spock's number as well. I thought Ethan Peck, he might not be the best singer, but I love the message that it's conveying, where he has to, and he's thinking of it in terms of variables, like X is equals whatever, right? X is the variable, and then he realizes I am the variable that's causing this problem for Chapel and stuff. So really, really good execution of a musical one-off episode, and I enjoyed it.
And Uhura finds
Secret
her place.
Santa to me, yes, she makes the connection. Secret Santa to me was Rebecca Romijn, who gets 2 songs, and one of them says like, in another life, I would have liked to sing musicals. And you're like, oh.
Yep, that's right. Because she sung a musical to Spock when they were locked in the turbo lift in one point in season 1.
Right.
So we know she likes those.
By the way,
that's right.
Just to mention this on pod, for the These Old Scientists episode, Rebecca Romijn, of course, is married to the first officer of Lower Decks, Jerry O'Connell, Jack Ransom.
Lieutenant Ransom, yes.
Yeah, and they do reference that a little bit in that episode where he's like, oh yeah, I had her poster when I was younger and stuff. So very funny connection.
Always thought she was the hottest number 1.
Yeah, that's
like, her or Riker.
Right.
Oh, Riker was a bit of a ladies' man
back in his day. Playing the fucking saxophone for you. Shut up.
Damn.
Right. Be quiet, old man.
So that's episode 9, a big musical number. And then of course we also had the intro, which is a musical rendition of the intro credits.
They did it a cappella. That's right.
Yeah.
Customized credits. So.
That's right. Yes. The third variation of the credits. Original, animated. Now we get musical. Fantastic.
Yeah. Very cool.
That's Subspace Rhapsody. And then we have episode 10, the big finale.
And so here we are. Eat a belly full of delicious food.
At this
Champagne
point,
down. I'm wearing my comm badge. We sit down and we go, well, we got to turn on this incredible finale. And what a fucking blast we had. Hit us. What's the plot?
Yeah. Well, this is hegemony. I believe it is pronounced. Yeah. And
hegemony.
I corrected you on one actress on Ninja Turtles, and I was wrong, so I should never speak that.
Hey, I have problems with pronunciation. That's why I always try to listen to how someone else is saying it on YouTube or something.
And if somebody gets it wrong, though, don't make fun of them because that just means they learned it by reading.
That's right.
Yes. Please don't light me up for saying Dr. Mbenga's real name.
Yeah.
That was a true moment of vulnerability for me.
I'm going to say hegemony and stick to it, but say whatever you like.
Sure.
There we go.
But we
So
get,
of course we had hints of this with so we had Captain Battelle, captain of the
Captain
USS
Banana.
Cayuga, who is like last week was like, all right, Pike, I'm off to this planet on the edge of Federation space. It's a colony. I'm sure nothing will go wrong. Bye-bye. And then we what we get is the of course the big Gorn invasion episode. And this is obviously a lot of zombie movie tropes happening here, as well as the Western town being attacked by some force. The sheriffs have to, defend the town, blah, blah, blah kind of thing. What are we thinking, guys? What are we thinking?
Very John Carpenter, very, Assault on Precinct 13, which is sort of zombie film as well. Is it okay if I just say real quick, not to bury the lead, but we're introduced to somebody in this episode who,
that's right.
Boy, it's an interesting balance because we've talked about it off pod. I'll introduce the conversation now about how many original characters should start appearing in this thing. I don't know what's the strength of it, but boy, was I happy to see a little man named Montgomery Scott in this episode.
Hello, I'm Montgomery Scott.
Montgomery Scott.
Oh, what do we have here? Oh, lordy.
We have this guy come in with a strong.
He's played by a
brogue, a Scottish brogue.
Tiny little Scot. Yes, he's full-blooded Scotsman.
He loves it.
Yeah, and he's on this planet. He was on a ship that was attacked by the Gorn. He managed to escape in a shuttle that crash landed on this planet. Unfortunately, this is exactly where the Gorn were heading, so he really didn't get away from them.
Oh, the frying pan into the fire, right?
Yeah.
You kind of feel like you can't trust him the whole episode, but in the back of my lizard brain, I'm like, but he's Scotty. I'm like, of course you can.
And regarding the TOS characters, I think it makes sense to start introducing all of them essentially, except for Chekhov, who doesn't appear until season 2 on TOS. So
he's not a bridge crew
he's
member,
a cadet.
Though.
He's an ensign, right? He
100% Walter Koenig will appear as like his grandfather and be like, I should get my grandson to intern on this ship one day. We'll be like, oh my god.
Engineer.
But we've already had the big, well, not even the big three excluding Bones, but we've had the big three of this show: Kirk, Spock, and Uhura. So now we have Scotty. So I would guess a Bones, we got to see a Bones at some point, and we got to see a Sulu at some point.
Right. But we might get, did Bones come with Kirk to the Enterprise? Was he already there? There's a lot that we don't know.
Bones would have been, to be made chief medical officer of the Enterprise, he probably would have been in Starfleet for many years before that. So he's bouncing around Starfleet. I'm sure they'll write him in at some point. Yeah.
What you're painting in my brain right now, a hotshot shirtless pilot who's into drag racing like ships, who like a young punk who's inspired, and fencing, who's inspired to join Starfleet after an interaction. Give me young Sulu, who's like, oh, behave, and says like all the classic George Takei things. Please.
I mean, they really need to nail the casting. Sulu and Bones. Like, Bones, I feel like would be surprisingly hard to cast because you need some. I mean, first of all, Carl Urban.
I would have thought that about
such a good job. Yeah.
Well, but maybe it was, and Paul Wesley's just that good.
Right, and they're growing on me. But Bones, Carl Urban does a great, rendition of the original Bones, and so to follow that up. And I know we've talked about Kelvin versus Strange New Worlds. We're leaning Strange New Worlds for most of the castings.
We are.
They really got to nail this Bones because I love Bones as a character. They need someone who can do that kind of cantankerous, you green-blooded Vulcan, so he can argue with Spock,
Well, Mike and I have revealed that we maybe like this Montgomery Scott more than Simon Pegg.
See, that is wild to me, only because he was just introduced. We've had one episode with him. I can't put him above Simon Pegg
and he nails it.
Simon Pegg is great, though.
But he never looked like Scotty to me.
No, this guy feels like Scotty. That was
This guy is a short, squat little Scottish man. He
Sure.
is legitimately
Little
Scottish. If you
wily.
put a little mustache on him and a glove, I guess, to hide one of his fake fingers, he would very
Yeah.
much
He's
remind
gonna
me
get
of,
his
James
finger
Doohan.
bit by a Gorn.
I don't dislike this Scotty. I just need more time with him, like with Kirk originally. Like I want him.
Fair enough.
I'm sure he's going to grow on me. He was fine in this episode, and it was kind of a surprise for him to come in. He's kind of like the survivor in a zombie movie that kind of comes in and is like, "Look, I built this trap. Blah blah blah. I've been dealing with these zombies for a while now. Let me show you how this works and everything." And they're all boarded up in this western town, essentially this colony on the edge of space. And so, of course, the Cayuga was there on the planet during the invasion. The crew of the Cayuga was destroyed, and it's sitting in space, half, whatever the word is that I'm thinking
It's
of.
in a decaying orbit. It's up there in space, but it's in a decaying orbit. But
Yes.
what predicates all this is, we were teased, Memento Mori. We kind of thought the Gorn is going to be the main enemy for Strange New Worlds. That's confirmed. It's a Gorn attack, right? But what predicates this is there's something with the orbit of the planet or the colony somehow goes past the demarcation line that the Gorn are like, this is our territory or some shit.
Yeah, so it's essentially this colony is outside of Federation space, actually. They're a colony of humans that decided to leave the Federation, go live on this frontier town, essentially, of space. And so they're not under Starfleet jurisdiction. So they're not technically protected or governed by Starfleet, but they're living just on the edge of space. So they're actually in what the Gorn consider their space.
Right.
So it becomes a border
in
dispute.
my
The
opinion,
Gorn aren't sending
our
memos to
tax
Starfleet.
money,
No.
Yeah.
but our tax money should not go towards these people getting vaccines.
That's
They're
right.
not part
They
of the
chose to leave the
Federation.
Federation. They got
Right,
offended
yes.
themselves, right?
Bunch
But
of
it is a
fucking
lot like,
anti-vaxxers in space.
it is a lot like the American frontier, going out west, leaving the established U.S. government of the East and heading out west to try to strike gold and become
And
rich.
you set
right?
up somewhere that turns out someone else has already been here the whole time, and you were ignorant to think you could just post up.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's usually the Native American. Usually, a lot of those westerns don't age well because of their depiction of Native Americans
But
as
the point
savages.
is those lands were
but
settled and they weren't paying attention.
Yeah.
People were defending what they thought was their land, or that what was their land. But in this show, the Gorn are claiming this is their territory. It's
Right.
not
Yeah,
equating
much
Native
like
Americans to
lizards.
the villains. But what I'm saying is,
Yes.
situation
No,
of
they
being
are.
where you're
You
not
are.
supposed to be.
But we're getting
Fuck
more
around and find
nuance
out.
of the Gorn here, where we're kind of thinking, hey, maybe the Gorn aren't just like mindless killing machines. Maybe we just need to understand them better. And that's what Pike, of course, always wants to do. He's looking for a way to understand someone rather than fight them directly. But
That's
at the
right.
same time, they are doing these provoking actions of invading this planet.
And like what seems like
And
inhuman kind of war crime stuff. But yeah,
Yeah.
like they're brutal.
You shout him out here real quick, and I will as well. This is maybe my favorite Christopher Pike performance. I think Anson
Yes.
Mount, this entire episode, plays such a different captain who is constantly off his footing, afraid, nervous, tense, has to get talked down by people, is making mistakes, constantly says to them, "What would you do? What would you do right now?" I'm just so worked up
He's
because
kind of,
Captain Banana is in trouble.
Captain Banana, yeah. He's second guessing
Plenty.
himself. So Captain Battelle is on this planet, as well as Nurse Chapel, who went with them on the Cayuga as part of her whole scientific
Internship.
thing that she's doing, internship. Yeah. So Spock's very worried, of course, about Chapel. Pike is worried about Battelle. And then you have Starfleet telling them, you can't go over there. Like, that's past our border. We can't authorize that. And essentially saying you have to leave the Cayuga to fend for themselves. And Pike does a classic Starfleet captain trope of ignoring Starfleet and doing his own
Mhm.
thing and breaking the rules, which I think every captain has done at some point, for good reason. And sometimes you just have to be like, no, we're not going to leave these people behind. I don't care if it's over the border. They're our friends. So, yeah, love this episode. A lot of zombie stuff, right? We have the boarded up
Yes.
building they're all hiding out in. We have so many different sort of they even reference it directly by saying, oh, watch old zombie movies, you'll learn how to like hide from these people or
These
whatever.
are special guns that can only kill this type of enemy. You're like, oh, okay.
They're introducing, some militarized Starfleet. There's this, as Ortega puts it, break in case of Gorn, this secret cache of Gorn killing weapons that have been made that
Yes.
you can
Right.
bust out. So this is something we haven't seen out of Starfleet either.
Yes,
And they get past
we
the-
also
Oh, sorry. I was just going to
well,
say
we also get the payoff real quick. Sorry for Ortegas, who finally gets to say the line of like, "Oh, I do get to go on the away mission! Hooray!"
She finally
Yeah.
gets her away mission, correct?
she doesn't just fly the ship; she has to fly the shuttle.
Yes, I also fly the shuttle.
But they get through.
I know what
so
I'm
these-
doing. She keeps saying that to him.
Right. These Gorn ships are sitting in orbit of this planet, so they need to get through these Gorn ships without being detected. So how they do that is by disguising their shuttle with a bunch of space debris, like in a zombie movie, putting their blood and guts on you to walk past them without alerting them, as seen in like The Walking Dead and other things. So they do that with the shuttle. It just looks like a bunch of space junk, and that's how they're able to get
Falling
through
into
the
the
sort of
atmosphere.
blockade. Yeah.
So they're coming in hot, quite literally. She has to do a last minute maneuver below the tree line, kind of thing. You've seen it 100 times. But I want to bring up, because I rewatched Arena after we had done this, and I'm like, I want to see how this compares and contrasts, because a lot of what we're seeing is just an exaggerated version of the Arena in TOS, where like what they do in Arena is there's a problem at a colony. They show up and it's just been decimated by this unknown enemy. And there's no communications available. Like all communications are down. And that's what they're doing here. Communications are out. They're decimating this colony. And, at the end, Kirk is like, he has to fight this thing. And he's like, the entity pits them against each other. They end up in a part of space where like some anomaly says, you guys are fighting. You have small brains. Someone let you guys fight each other on a planet. And that's how you're going to solve it. And at the end, Kirk is like, this thing, it's thinking and it can fly a spaceship. Like clearly it's sentient. I don't understand it, but I'm not going to kill it. And that's like what Pike starts dealing with. It's like, are they just monsters? And that's like the question. I think it's cool that was introduced to stupid green rubber suit man, and they're just doing it with a lot more gravitas here. And it's cool that they're adhering to that classic Trek stuff. I love it.
And again, as you're saying, like we do see the Gorn, we see a full adult Gorn. And Colin, you were saying this was all done practically.
Well,
or was Mike saying that? I don't remember who
Mike
said it.
was saying with
Someone
some
said
fucking puppets. You were watching that. What is it again? The Ready Room.
Yeah, the Ready Room. And I was saying this is throwing back to the guy in the green suit. And I was like, these Gorn look cool because we see an adult Gorn. We'll get there, but they look great, And then I found out the little ones are puppets and the adult ones are human performers in like 100-pound suits, and then they do some CG on the face, but it's all practical. The eyes, the mouth, everything. It's like, wow, they committed to guy in the green suit, and I just can't be happier for them to do that.
They chose to do that over CG, which convincing any production company to be like, no, instead of this much cheaper CG, we want to do puppets and practical effects and stuff.
It's
like,
so
it's
in the
impossible
spirit.
to convince. Yeah.
Here's the thing. I've told this story on the podcast before. I meant to tell it on the Into Darkness episode as like a refresher, but I'll do it on here because it's a little more relevant. I was privy to some information back in the day that when Into Darkness was coming out, that the original plot of that film was the Gorn. That the Star Trek was very interested in using that enemy. I think maybe in place of the Klingon stuff, maybe still it was going to be Wrath of Khan, but maybe the foot soldiers would have been lizard men. Hasbro. So Paramount bailed on that and pushed to a different Hasbro property. All the previs CGI effects of lizard men in space outfits to the Battleship film, the Peter Berg Battleship film, which if you guys have seen that, is the aliens are lizards in space outfits with guns who are the Gorn. Now, truly, since then, I know that every writer who has done live action Star Trek has pitched, like, what if we do the Gorn? What if we do the Gorn? So when we saw in that first season of Strange New Worlds, I just remember thinking, like, these motherfuckers finally got it in. Akiva Goldsman, who we know has just, like, had his little hands in this universe forever, finally got to do what he wanted to do. And I think the choice to do it practical was the right choice.
I was so happy when I saw that. It reminded me of I'm addicted to this kind of stuff, like practical effects. Jim Henson. I talk about the legacy of the Ninja Turtles animatronics becoming the dinosaurs, all that stuff, and there's DNA in these Gorn, and I love it. And it reminded me of DVD special features that are long gone, like Ready Room. Great. They did a whole one on
You're selling me on
costuming.
it, dude.
I thought it was very alien, very the way they kind of move around and stuff, and seeing the big adult.
We get a baby.
Spock guys do the spacewalk. We get a zero gravity fight against an adult Gorn, similar to in that Star Trek movie, because I can't keep them straight when they're fighting Klingons. And Worf has a one-liner. Assimilate this. It's the Borg. Sorry, assimilate this.
First contact.
The first contact space fight.
Yeah. So Spock, Chapel is apparently the only one left alive on the Cayuga.
He doesn't even look, Jacob. We're not even gonna pretend like he searches for life for 1 second. He finds his girlfriend and he's like, "You ready to go?"
If he didn't see Chapel, she would have died with that ship. But because their plan is to send basically the carcass of the Cayuga down on this beam thing. Essentially, there's this Gorn thing that is stopping transporter and communication signals. This is another Star Trek trope. There's always something blocking the signals, because otherwise you could just use transporters to get out of almost everything. So,
but the Gorn have a device that renders you blind in it, just like it did. But it is a Star Trek trope now. But in Arena, that's like a throwaway line, and they're like, they have a specific device, and so we're going to get the saucer section to crash into it.
It's incredible.
Yeah. So that's what they need to do. They need to send the Cayuga into this thing so they can get their transporters working. They can transport everyone off the planet and save them.
So Spock has to put jet boosters on the outside of the saucer section. Throughout that process, they encounter the Gorn. He sees Chapel. They do it, crashes into it. We beam everybody out. Phew, we did it. We got Montgomery Scott here, and then it turns out...
Oh, I'll just be on your ship now. Great, okay.
Everybody's beaming. We see beaming happening, right?
But it's green beaming
cliffhanger
colors.
It's green beaming. It's not, in fact, our heroes who are beaming them out. And if you're the three of us on this couch, again, having such a lovely evening, you lean forward, scream out when it cuts back to upstairs and our captain's kind of getting yelled at. And it's truly a question of like, what are you going to do, Pike? Pike, what are you going to do? Cut to black. To be continued comes up, and we just go, what? Just cannot believe
Classic.
Because it finally hits us. What are they doing this time? The two-parter.
Best of both worlds,
bitches.
Ending with, I am Locutus of Borg, to be continued. And then you had to wait a whole summer to see what happened to Captain Picard. I'm sure,
couple
it was
years
crazy.
Now.
We're going to have to wait so long.
Yes, unfortunately, with the writer's strike, who knows when season 3 of Strange New Worlds will come out at this point. But yeah, so the fates of the crew of the Cayuga, mostly that are on the planet, we don't know what's going on. Batel,
Ortegas.
Ortegas. And we should mention Batel, classic zombie trope, was infected or impregnated, you could say, with Gorn eggs, because essentially how Gorn spawn their young is they implant their eggs into humans or other animals.
That's where Lon was.
And they're essentially, they chest burst out when they grow and use the human for sustenance, right? So Batel has been impregnated with Gorn eggs. They need to figure out a way to save her before she dies, right?
Yep.
Put her in the buffer.
Put everybody in the buffer.
Everybody
put by a whole
that's standard protocol.
Everybody.
Put the Gorn in the buffer.
Just put her in the buffer.
Well,
put the Gorn in the buffer.
Yeah, you could fix chewing gum flavor by just rebuffering it, So just put her in the buffer and pull her out minus egg. Find the egg pattern and just remove it.
Maybe they don't know how to do that yet, but
Montgomery might find a way to tweak the power under.
He figured out transwarp beaming. Right? So
not this version of him.
But yeah, as soon as we get, we think we saved everybody, and then we find out a ton of the survivors and crew is on the Gorn ship, and then all these Gorn ships come out of orbit. Shit's going to hell, and Pike is frozen, and then we hear Una. The last line is orders, Captain, and she desperately reaches out to Pike, and he just stares in shock because he doesn't know what to do, and that's credits. And we know in Balance of Terror, he knows he's not a great war strategist.
Strategist, yeah.
Yeah, That's not his
Right,
realm.
yeah,
This is
that's
something
not
so
he-
beyond
No.
anything
He's
he's
not a
faced.
warrior. He's not a soldier. He's an explorer and a diplomat. He doesn't want to
Yeah.
fight
Yes.
people. But yeah, crazy cliffhanger, and I can't wait to see how it's resolved.
Yeah, I
Yes.
think absolutely
And
loved
look,
it though.
that's Star Trek. We're going to jump into our final thoughts here, but this is obviously a long, overstuffed episode. The point of this is, if you've been listening along to our episodes where we've been doing our film series, been talking for over a year, right, Jacob? Literally all these Star Trek films are close to a year, maybe?
Longer than a year. We
Um,
started in March or April of 2022.
Wow.
We have one more coming up, and that's sans this episode. This is one of our last times to talk TV. Then we're going to talk about the movies one more time. And we're going to be done with Trek. And as we keep pointing out, we're not going to get any more of this show for a little bit of time.
No, maybe we'll have a Lower Decks season 3 episode at some point.
Oh, yes.
'cause that's
sure.
gonna be starting soon.
That's a good way to squeeze in there. But I have loved talking Star Trek with you guys so much. It is fun to think about putting a cap on it, but it is going to be a part of my life where like Mike, you said to us, like, this is your nice little show that you get in a nice little mood for, where you'd watch it every week. And I felt the exact same fucking way. So
Yeah,
10 weeks of
we
joy.
It's bittersweet.
thank you. Yes. And
Absolutely.
just, if you truly have taken the journey and listened to all our Star Trek content this entire time, Captain, salute for you. Doo-doo, Captain on the bridge. Like, you rule.
Boatswain.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure.
Thank you
this
so
is-
much.
This is definitely serving as kind of, not completely because we have Into Dark or Beyond, but this
Beyond
is almost
last
just
to
a season
cap it.
finale for us. Yeah.
Maybe the last, maybe not once the Star Trek 4 Kelvin universe comes out in my dreams.
Dreaming.
But yeah,
Right.
unfortunately, there's not going to be much new content Star Trek wise, except for Lower Decks season starting soon, which I know you're looking forward to. But it is bittersweet to end this show and 10 weeks of great episodes. Sad it's going away. I'm going to miss Pike. I'm going to miss all my favorite characters.
Well, as we go to final thoughts, I'll just have to say, these characters will be gorn but not forgotten, and we'll catch you on the other side.
Hey. We're back here wrapping it up, giving our final thoughts here on Strange New Worlds Season 2. I think I like the show so much, but just to give my final thoughts here real quick. To answer our question before, more episodes, less episodes, I don't think Lower Decks would exist if there were less episodes in a show. When you get that filler stuff, you can conceptually explore. They did that with that episode of TNG you guys told me about called Lower Decks that inspired Lower Decks. We wouldn't have gotten the crossover without that.
The Lower Decks ensigns and people who work on the ship but aren't the bridge crew, and that was never really explored before in Star Trek.
No.
Yep.
At this rate, they're never going to explore what was the name of the young lady who sits next to Ortegas and I guess
Mitchell?
answers the emails.
Mitchell.
What is her job? Mitchell. What does she do?
She sits in the Chekhov spot, so I
She
guess
certainly
if you think
doesn't
about
fly
it,
the
she's
ship.
sitting next to Sulu.
I've already asked you guys what Chekhov does, and you've given
He
me
checks
very
for
mixed
vessels.
answers. So
And
he looks
sometimes
for the
arms a
nuclear
torpedo.
weapons.
he looks out for the vessels.
Yeah.
I think it's
Well,
like the
God bless
navigator
her.
role, right, where she's plotting the course or whatever.
I think
You need
the
a
pilot should be in
navigator.
charge of where they're going, but that's
Tell
fair.
us what Mitchell
Yeah.
does,
Like,
listeners.
that makes sense. I get the radar, even tech or something for the submarine equivalent. That I love that. That makes sense. I want more, and I think this show would be a really, really popular show if it was on any other fucking network, or even if it aired on CBS or something.
Ooh.
And I'm just so worried about it constantly. And when you guys are like, we'll do another Lower Decks episode, that'll be there. Even that one, I'm like, we're getting 4 seasons of this. Like, I feel like I'm making out like a bandit in the night. Like, don't even talk about it. I don't want people to know it exists, because then it will be canceled. Someone will write it off for a tax credit.
Don't
or
remind
whatever these
executives they're
streaming
still paying
services
for
do
it.
now. Yes.
Oh, God.
I have no concept of like how popular Strange New Worlds actually is, because I feel like through us, like we all love it, but as far
A
as
lot of
general
people in my life
audiences-
talk about it. A lot of people in my life are you guys and me telling my dad to
Mhm.
watch it. It's like, yeah,
Right.
that's not a good gauge. But in the real world, nobody talks about this thing,
No.
dude.
And well, in Star Trek has been a hard sell recently. I mean, Discovery kind of flopped. The first 2 seasons of Picard definitely flopped. They had to completely change the direction of that show for season 3. Season 3, people like that more, but I still don't think it's not in the zeitgeist as much as like even the Disney Star Wars stuff and even the Disney MCU stuff that hasn't been very good. I'm sure way more people watched Secret Wars than Secret Invasion than fucking watched Strange New Worlds, which is mind-boggling to me.
I would hope that's
but-
not true. But
Or even the
yeah.
Ahsoka show that I don't really have any interest in watching. Like, I know people are still watching these shows. I don't know what Strange New Worlds audience is.
Oh,
Yeah.
Ahsoka. That thing. That is the ultimate. Every time I look at an ad for that, I'm like, oh yeah,
Yeah, the
That's
show that
made
it's
for
a sequel
me,
to 2
honestly.
animated
Yes.
shows that you would
Yeah,
have to have
I'm
seen
here
when you
for
were a
it.
kid. Yeah.
I'll say Star
I don't
Wars.
know,
now
Mike.
we've all
But
said
even
it once.
you, I feel are like, thank you
You're
for
welcome.
doing that.
You know, it's we'll see how that Ahsoka show is. I'm not super psyched for it, but I still think it's going to have better viewership numbers and more people talking about it than Strange New Worlds, just because
Yes.
Star
Yes.
Wars as an IP has a lot more clout these days. But I
Yeah,
think
that's comparing Tribbles to Lost Cats. It's 2 completely
Yeah.
different things.
but I've been, of course, very critical of Alex Kurtzman and Akiva Goldsman and the people behind modern Trek, really since the Kelvin time. But I do think they've righted the ship in recent years from Discovery and seasons 1 and 2 of Picard being a particular low point to changing that around to now Discovery is ending, Picard is ending. Strange New Worlds is the flagship show, with also Lower Decks being the secondary kind of show. And
Mhm.
both of those are so good that I really think they've righted the ship in terms of quality. They just need the audience, right?
They
Yeah, and to pay
deleted
everybody.
Prodigy, Jacob. They deleted
Yes.
it. It's gone.
It's not
Yeah.
in the buffer.
Gone.
It's possible that maybe
They
coming back. I'm
freed
not
up
What did we
sure.
space in
do?
the buffer.
We
Uh,
save money.
Yeah. Unfortunately, that's the
What have
one
we
show I
done?
never watched, Prodigy, which is
Me
a
neither. Now
more
it's gone.
kid-focused show.
And you guys love Janeway.
Yeah, I'm a family
Yeah.
fan. I hope there's
Love is a
coffee in
strong
that
word.
Nebula.
I like Janeway.
Okay, never mind. I think
Fair enough.
Robert Beltran in the news, we should say, by the way, but let's just skip over
Chakotay,
this.
Yeah. Let's do this. Do you have a favorite episode this season, Colin?
I am going to put Those Old Scientists above it. Specifically, I know we shouted out all the comedy, but the moment in the little spaceship where Mariner and Boimler say, we traded, what was it? It was like salt, like we're here. So they had to like trade salt to these people, which means these, survivors didn't get that. And it's caused this chain of effect. We need to correct that. We need to own up and be responsible. I loved it. I thought that was great.
Yeah,
I'll give you my top 3.
that's fine too.
Wow.
Because I can't even just pick one,
It's
but I
hard.
think number 1,
Charades.
those old scientists, number 1. Number
Wow.
2,
Yes.
Tomorrow and Tomorrow and Tomorrow.
Yes.
And
Right there.
number 3 could be, a couple ones, but I think I'll give it to Under the Cloak of War, because I thought that was
Hey,
a really
thank you.
strong Mbenga
Wow.
and Chapel episode, and and 3 different tones.
Yeah.
I guess Under the
Yes.
Cloak of War and Tomorrow a little more similar in terms of tone, but
But it's, yeah.
yeah,
There's
but I
some
just
hijinks
love
happening
that.
tomorrow. Some.
Yeah.
It's
Um,
sci-fi adventure versus like war drama. I would
Yeah.
argue very different, actually.
Yeah.
But yes.
And ultimately, Strange New Worlds. I'm not ready to say in terms of like it's not my favorite Star Trek show ever, because that would be such a huge accomplishment. I mean, that would be like to be put above DS9 in my mind. It would have to be like the greatest show ever made, because I love DS9 so much. That's kind of almost a comfort show for me, because I first binged it during a time in my life. I broke my collarbone. I was bedridden for a while after surgery, and I was just blazing through these episodes of DS9. And so it's like my safe space that I go to.
Right.
Yeah.
So really to surpass that would be an amazing feat. But I think Strange New Worlds, even being in the top 3 of Star Trek shows for me with DS9 and TNG, 2 shows that I love. I mean, that's huge praise, I think. And I think Strange New Worlds
Yes.
has been super, super strong. and I just love it. So great job to
Mike,
the cast
favorite
and crew.
episode?
Yeah. Oh, sorry.
Yeah, no worries. I might
you're
do
good.
a 3-pack here. I'll do Under the Cloak
Do
of
it.
War #1. Because the revelation of the practical effects, and I like the nods to the original Hegemony Part 1. Well, hopefully it pays off. And These Old Scientists. That was delightful.
Yes.
And I must say, Subspace Rhapsody, a lot of the old heads didn't want to watch it, but I'll take 10 Subspace Rhapsodies for every one Sub Rosa.
Yeah. The
you know what I
old
mean?
heads need to remember
Chill.
how many bad one-off episodes there are in Star Trek's history, because there's a lot of them. Like TNG is a great show, but like a full maybe 25% of the episodes in that show are not very good.
Go watch Skin of Evil, yeah.
I saw an argument from a nerd that was like, it's too many gimmick episodes. And another nerd was like, what do you mean? He's like, well, there were 2 gimmick episodes, a musical and a crossover. And it's like, yeah, 2 out of 8.
Yeah.
And are those gimmicks?
And those aren't even really gimmicks, because they tell interesting stories within that gimmick. And Star Trek's always done gimmick episodes. Like you had mirror episodes, you've had time travel. We've had plenty of gimmick episodes before.
Yeah.
So
I look at it like
these
this.
people, do they even watch Star Trek? I don't know.
Yeah. To wrap up my thoughts real quick, we can get on. Star Trek, at its best, it's about humanity and how we can hopefully one day be the best of us, right? What the representation of the best of us. And I think Strange New Worlds is a distillation of the best of Trek. I can't say it's my favorite show, just like you, Jacob, but I think, damn, is it the most consistent? It's the it's the easiest watch for new people, and it would be doing great on network. I love this show. I think it does not miss. I think there's just some episodes that are slightly weaker, but I don't think there's a single bad episode of the entire series so far, and that's incredible.
And I totally agree with you that it's the best show for a newbie to start watching if they wanted to get into Star Trek, and then that could lead to some of the older shows if you're interested. And I even watched, when I was visiting my family last year, I watched some season 1 episodes with my sister, who's not a Star Trek fan at all, doesn't know anything about Star Trek, and she enjoyed them and she was having fun. So, really, normies, you can get into it.
If you made it this far, you probably already have, just by the way. Thank you.
Yes. And I wanted to ask you guys,
again, God bless.
season 1 versus season 2. Did you think season 2 was stronger than season 1?
Yes.
I think so as well.
And I rewatched a ton of season 1 before we watched the finale, and I think so.
And I liked season 1 a lot too. And just to say, like, again, for me to put this over DS9 would be hard. That would be like if a new Star Wars movie came out and I put it above, Empire Strikes Back. Like,
right,
it would have to be the best Star Wars movie ever made. So that's the only reason I would
like
put
Rise of Skywalker.
Yeah,
that's why you got it so high.
Love Rise of Skywalker.
Yep.
J.J. Abrams, made my favorite Star Trek Into Darkness.
Star Wars.
I was so bummed when they killed Palpatine in Return of the Jedi. When they brought him back, thank God. Somehow
Khan returned.
That's right.
But when Palpatine was revealed to be John Harrison, it was quite the twist.
Oh,
yes.
There's a new
Somehow
senator,
John
Harrison. Yeah.
John Harrison.
Oh, God.
He's back.
All right. Well, our 2.5-hour mission was to break down Strange New World Season 2. It was a long one, but I had a lot of fun again. I could talk about Star Trek forever with you guys. This is one of my favorite shows, and I'm going to miss it.
Here's the thing. Even now, as we're saying goodbye, I'm like, there's 30 other things I wanted to mention about each of those individual episodes.
Right. Yeah, I don't know the full time length on this, but it may surpass one of our longest ever, which was the Mission Impossible one we just did.
Which is wild.
Oh, wow.
But again, you're talking 10 episodes of a 1 hour long show versus a movie. It's a lot of episodes to talk about. So
we talked about 7 movies in that one podcast.
And just be
That's
thankful,
true as well.
Because I looked up with Jacob off pod. If we were to do one episode for every episode of Star Trek, it would take roughly 18 years plus or minus doing one episode a week.
Wow.
Hey,
yeah.
I hate that, Mike.
I got a new podcast.
Yeah, there's like
idea.
880 something episodes total plus or minus. So that's a lot
Hey,
of months.
who would win? The Enterprise or the Entity?
The Entity.
Wasn't the Entity
Enterprise.
just like V'ger essentially?
Oh, I guess that's right.
It's not V'ger yet. It would become
That's
V'ger
right.
if it gets to space.
The Entity will download itself into someone's body, and then Paul Wesley will make out with that person.
Yes.
Yeah. I think if anyone can stop the
programmed into a variety
Entity,
of techniques.
If anyone
It's
other than
Captain
Ethan
Kirk.
Hawke can stop the Ethan Hunt,
Yeah.
or
Hunt.
Ethan Hawke, maybe he can
The
stop
actor
it.
Ethan Hawke.
I think it would be Captain Pike or Captain.
No,
Kirk.
it would be Kirk, because Kirk would just
Yes.
talk to it until it killed itself. Like he did with that
It
other
is funny to
supercomputer.
imagine Pike in all of Kirk's moments in the films, because he would just be like, Feature, what are you doing? Like, you don't want to do this. Whereas like Kirk kind of like curses at things, or like makes out with them, or like grabs them.
Right.
Well, that would be the alternate
Um,
timelines.
Yeah, but that's Star Trek: Strange New Worlds season 2.
It is.
Wish it wasn't over.
It is.
Normies, tell us what you think. Write in, leave us comments, check out the YouTube,
Please.
do all that stuff. Right.
Order an
As
apron.
always, hit us up at normies_like_us, where I'm sure you'll be able to see this YouTube footage of Mike's apron, and then be able to order your own. And as we said, give us your thoughts. And truly, I am curious. If you've listened to all our Star Trek content, comment and be like, yeah, I'm an old head. You know, these are my thoughts on the musical episode or whatever. I would love to know from a real Star Trek fan what your thoughts were on this whole season and what we've been talking about.
Absolutely. If you've been watching the movies along with us, let us know. I think that would be a lot of fun. Yeah.
Yeah,
It'd be wild.
It wouldn't be beyond the scope of imagination to have you joining us for the future of the final video.
And that's going to be bittersweet in
Yeah.
2 weeks when we say goodbye to the Trek
To the Beastie
franchise, at
Boys.
least for the most part. Yeah.
Mhm.
Like Gene Roddenberry, we're gonna launch Jacob's ashes into space.
Mhm.
That's right. I want my wife to be the ship's computer.
That's right. All
All
right. Well, we've been your
right, till then,
crew.
we've been your hosts. Yeah, this is Kaluna.
Captain Christopher Mike.
This is Lieutenant Commander, I believe, Jock, science officer.
Lieutenant
You never had
Commander.
bacon?
Wow.
Is he a lieutenant commander? I don't know.
Just a lieutenant
Sure.
now. That's a lot of lieutenants.
Soon he'll be ambassador.
Live long and prosper.
Live long and prosper, normies. Those
Scotty!
old scientists.
Give her all she's got, Captain.